I'm Max, 24 years old, and I've always been the responsible one in my family. You know the type, the one who somehow becomes the de facto tech support, emotional support, and financial backup all rolled into one. I moved out when I was 20 and have been living on my own since, working a stable remote job in design, paying my bills, and keeping my distance from the chaos that is my family. They're not all bad, not all the time, but when it comes to guilt trips and passive-aggressive manipulation, they could run a masterclass. Especially my mom. Now, my mom, she's got this charm about her that works on most people. Sweet smile, soft voice, that concerned parent aura that makes strangers think she's just the most loving, generous person alive. And she can be, when it benefits her. But when things don't go her way, that mask comes off fast. Growing up, I was constantly reminded that my accomplishments were only possible because of her sacrifices. If I ever hinted at doing something on my own terms, I was met with sarcastic quips like, "Sure, Max, you know everything now, don't you?" Or "Let me guess, you think you're better than us?" Still, I kept the peace. I showed up to the holidays, sent birthday gifts, and called often enough to avoid the "you forgot about us" speeches. But things started shifting last year. I got a pretty big promotion. More responsibilities, yes, but also a serious pay bump. I didn't tell anyone at first. Not because I was trying to hide it. I just knew how the conversation would go. My family has this sixth sense when it comes to money. The second they suspect you're doing better, they start circling like vultures, looking for a way to benefit. But I slipped up. My younger sister, Lena, 19, came to visit for a weekend, and during dinner, she saw a bank notification pop up on my phone. It was a deposit, a bonus, and it was generous. Her eyes lit up. She didn't say anything right then, but I could tell. The gears were turning. She spent the rest of the weekend asking weirdly specific questions. "How's work been lately? Are they treating you well? Must be nice not having to worry about rent. Do you still use that budgeting app? I need help with mine." It was subtle, but I knew where it was going. Sure enough, about a week later, I got a group text from Mom titled, "Family Vacarie 2025. There were pictures attached, a beach resort, palm trees, some itinerary screenshots. The message said something like, "We haven't done a big family trip in years. It's time to make memories again. I found this amazing deal if we book by next week." I stared at it for a good 10 minutes before responding. Because here's the kicker, there was no question. "No, would you be interested? Or do you think you could help us make this happen?" It was presented as a done deal. I scrolled up and saw my name already listed under Room 2, Max. I replied with a simple, "Looks nice. Who's paying for all this?" Mom responded almost instantly. "We were thinking you could cover it. You've been doing so well lately. It'd mean a lot to the family." Red heart. Now here's the thing. I could have afforded it. Not easily, but I could have shuffled some stuff around. But that wasn't the point. There was no discussion, no planning. Just an assumption that because I'd been responsible and worked hard, I now owed them a luxury vacation. I didn't reply. Not right away. Cue the calls. First Lena. "Come on, Max, don't be like that. We never get to do anything as a family anymore. It's not like we're asking for a trip to Paris." Then Mom. "You always say you want us to be close, but when we try to do something together, you're nowhere to be found." And then my aunt, who somehow got roped in, left me a voicemail about how family is everything and money comes and goes, but memories are forever. After a few days of this, I sent a calm, direct text. "I appreciate the thought, but I'm not paying for the whole trip. If you guys want to do something together, we can plan something reasonable and split costs." No dramatics, just the truth. That didn't go over well. Mom called and went full guilt mode. "I carried you for 9 months, Max. I gave up so much for you. And this is how you repay me? Over a little trip? You're not even thinking of your sister. She's still so young. She deserves some fun. Or are you just too good for us now?" I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just said, "I'm not paying." End of story. Silence for a couple days. Then I got a notification that a charge had hit my credit card. A big one. Over $2,000. At first, I thought it was fraud. I called the bank. They said it was for airline tickets. 3 of them. In my name. I sat there, stunned. Then I called the airline and asked for the itinerary. It matched the dates from Mom's trip plan. Same airport. Same destination. I asked who booked them. They said the name, Elaine Myers, my mom. I called her. She picked up like nothing was wrong. "Max, you're going to love the hotel. Ocean view and everything. You used my card. She actually laughed. Well, I needed to hold the reservation. We were going to pay you back eventually. No, Mom. You stole my card info. Oh, don't be dramatic. That was the moment something in me cracked. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just said, cool, and hung up. Then I opened my banking app, reversed the charges, canceled the card, and requested a new one. I also called the airline and had the tickets flagged as fraudulent. That part wasn't easy. They made me jump through a few hoops, but eventually, I got confirmation. The tickets were canceled. No refund would be issued since it wasn't a refundable fare. Tough luck. I didn't say anything. I just waited. An hour later, my phone rang. It was Lena. Did you cancel the tickets? I stayed quiet. You're joking, right? We were literally packing. Still quiet. Then Mom called. This time, she didn't sound sweet or charming. She sounded furious. You didn't really think you were coming, did you? She said, voice dripping with contempt. You're not even part of this family anymore. I smiled. Cool, I said, and hung up again. But that wasn't the end. Because 2 days later, I got a letter from my mom's lawyer. Or at least someone pretending to be. The letter claimed I had committed financial interference and caused undue emotional distress by reversing the charges and canceling the trip. And that was when things got really interesting. At first, I laughed. I mean, how could I not? A letter? From a supposed lawyer? It was printed on plain white paper, no letterhead, no credentials, and filled with dramatic phrases like failure to comply and familial negligence. The sender's name at the bottom was James T. Reynolds, ESQ, which sounded like something pulled from a 90s courtroom drama. I did a quick search, no law license, no firm, no online footprint. Nada. So unless my mom had stumbled across some discount legal service from a cereal box promotion, this lawyer was about as real as a soap opera plot twist. Still, it shook me a little. Not because I thought it was real, but because she was willing to go that far. That fast. I started wondering, what was this really about? Was it just about the trip? Or had I somehow become this symbol of everything she resented? The one who got out. The one who didn't need her anymore. The next few days were quiet, but in that eerie, suspense movie kind of way. Like the moment before a storm, when the sky goes still. I didn't hear from my mom or Lena, which was rare. No calls. No texts. Not even passive-aggressive, hope you're okay messages. I should have enjoyed the peace, but instead, I felt like I was standing on a minefield. Then came the group chat. I was brushing my teeth when my phone buzzed again and again, ping, 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 like a slot machine hitting the jackpot. I opened it. The group chat now had 8 people. Not just Mom and Lena, but my cousin Jake, my Aunt Marcia, my Uncle Greg, and 2 people I didn't even recognize at first. Apparently, word had spread, and they were all concerned about my erratic behavior. Marcia was the first to chime in. Max, sweetie, we know your mom can be a little much sometimes, but this could have been such a beautiful time for everyone. Why blow it up over money? Then Jake, you reversed the charges? Seriously? Couldn't you have just said no? And my favorite, from Greg, who I hadn't spoken to in 3 years. Honestly, sounds like you've got a lot of bitterness you haven't dealt with. Maybe therapy would help. Therapy. Because I didn't want to be scammed out of a few $1,000s. I started typing a reply. Deleted it. Typed again. Deleted it. I wasn't sure what response would even be heard. Finally, I wrote, I didn't sign up for this trip. I said no, multiple times. The tickets were booked with my stolen card info. I reversed a fraudulent charge. You can call that blowing things up, but to me, it's just called setting boundaries. If you can't see that, then I think we all need a little space. And then I left the group. 15 seconds later, I got a text from Lena. You're really doing this, huh? I didn't reply. Another one came in. You were always the favorite. Mom bent over backward for you. One little thing, and you act like we owe you the world. The favorite. That was rich. I thought about the nights I stayed home to babysit while Lena went out, or the time I worked extra hours to cover her phone bill, or how I missed my college graduation because Mom got too sick to drive, only to post pictures on Facebook from a wine tasting an hour away. It was always the same script. Max, be a team player. Max, don't make it about you. Max, we're family. Until I started saying no. But here's where things took a turn. A real, stomach-sinking kind of turn. The next day, my manager pinged me on Slack. Casual. Hey, can we chat for 5? I figured it was project-related, so I joined the video call, coffee in hand, half listening. But her face was weirdly serious. "Hey Max, I just wanted to give you a heads up. We got an email this morning." I froze. "From who?" She looked uncomfortable. "Someone claiming to be a family member. They accused you of fraud. Said we should watch our backs and not trust you with sensitive information. They even attached screenshots of what looks like a police report." I blinked. "What?" She paused. "Don't worry. We know it's ridiculous. But I had to flag it to HR just to cover ourselves. I told them it was obviously personal, but I wanted you to know what's going on." After the call, I just sat there, completely still. I didn't even feel angry. Not yet. Just numb. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about smearing me. About control. Mom couldn't get what she wanted, so she decided to punish me in the most vindictive way possible, by making me look dangerous, unstable, untrustworthy. And what scared me most wasn't the HR notice or the stupid email. It was how fast she escalated. I opened my inbox, searched for anything from my mom's name, and there it was. An email sent 2 hours earlier. Subject line: "You left us no choice." There were attachments. Screenshots of texts, all out of context. A blurry photo of me at a bar from 3 years ago, laughing with a drink in hand. A fake-looking Word doc with the words "formal statement" in bold at the top. And the message itself was short. Just one line: "Actions have consequences, Max. You'll see that soon." My heart was pounding, not out of fear, but something deeper, something hotter. I had spent years swallowing my words, keeping my distance, trying to be the good son. I had forgiven more than I should have, tolerated what I would never advise a friend to tolerate. But this was war. And I wasn't going to sit back and watch her try to burn my life down. Not this time. I didn't sleep that night. I tried, lay in bed, eyes open, staring at the ceiling, but my brain wouldn't shut off. It kept spinning through memories like a tape on fast forward. Birthday parties where I was scolded for not sharing enough, late-night arguments about money, my mom crying in the kitchen after Lena crashed my car, blaming me for not watching her better. It was all playing in a loop now, recontextualized by that one email. You'll see that soon. She hadn't just crossed a line, she'd set the whole map on fire. By morning, I had a plan. Not revenge. Not yet. That part would come later. First, I needed to protect myself. I started by calling my company's HR team. I explained the situation in more detail than I had with my manager. I told them I suspected a personal vendetta, that someone from my family was impersonating me or sending emails with false claims. Thankfully, HR was understanding. One of the reps, Dana, even said, "We've seen things like this before. Family can get messy." They logged everything and assured me they'd filter any future emails from my mom's address or anything similar. Next, I called my bank again. I confirmed the previous reversal had gone through, but I also asked them to block any future charges from the airline or the travel agency Mom had used, just in case. Then I went through every online account I owned, changing passwords, enabling two-factor authentication, and locking down anything that could be used against me. Venmo, PayPal, even my old Facebook account. I deleted the email from my mom, but not before saving every attachment and taking screenshots of the message. Just in case. It was around noon when I got the next surprise. A knock at my door. Not a soft, polite one. Not a package delivery. This was the kind of knock that said, "I know you're in there." I checked the peephole. It was Lena. Alone. I waited. 5 seconds. 10. Then opened it just enough to peer out. "Can I come in?" she said. No hello. No smile. "What do you want?" She sighed. "To talk. Just 5 minutes. Please." Against my better judgment, I let her in. She looked tired, like she hadn't slept either. Her eyes were ringed with smudged mascara, and her ponytail looked like it had been tied 3 days ago and never touched since. But the look she gave me wasn't apologetic. It was cold. She sat down on the edge of my couch like she owned the place. "I didn't know she was going to go that far," she said finally. "The email to your job. The whole fake lawyer thing. That wasn't part of the plan." "Plan?" I asked. She flinched. "Okay. Per word choice. I just meant. Mom said if we applied a little pressure, maybe you'd come around. Book the tickets, call it a misunderstanding. You know how she is." "Yeah, I do. But then you canceled them, and she just snapped." I crossed my arms. "So you drove all the way here to tell me that?" Lena's mouth tightened. "No. I came to warn you." That caught me off guard. She's talking to Aunt Dana now. And Uncle Fred. She's pulling out the big guns, trying to convince them you're cutting everyone off, isolating yourself. She's going to turn the whole family against you. I laughed once. That ship sailed. No, Max, you don't get it. She's saying you're unstable, that you're having some sort of mental episode. She brought up Dad. I stiffened. Our dad died when we were kids. Car accident. But in the years after, my mom crafted this narrative that he'd always been off. Moody. Paranoid. Unreliable. She never said the word crazy, but it was always implied. And now she was using that same script on me. She told Aunt Dana you've been spiraling. Said you might lose your job soon, and that's why you're lashing out. And you believe that? I asked. Lena hesitated. No, she said, but it was too late. Her pause had already answered me. You came here to warn me, huh? I said. Or did you come here to see if I'd crack? She stood up. I came here because she's scary when she's like this. You don't see it because you cut contact whenever things get hard. But I live with her, Max. I have to deal with the aftermath. And this time, she's not just angry, she's on some kind of mission. I opened the door. Then maybe it's time you stop living with her. Lena didn't move. She'll turn on you eventually, too, I added. You know that, right? Her eyes flickered. She didn't say anything. When she finally left, she didn't slam the door or scream. She just walked out and got in her car. I didn't hear from her again. But the next week? That's when everything really started to unravel. It started with my landlord. Hey Max, his voicemail said, weird thing, your mother called the office this morning. Said she was your emergency contact and needed a copy of your lease agreement. She said you were being evicted and she was coming to help you move out. I told her that wasn't true, obviously, but heads up. Then came my bank again. A new attempt to open a joint checking account with her name added to mine. Then one of my friends, Alex, messaged me, Bro, your mom just added me on Facebook. She's been DMing me. Asked if I've noticed any changes in your behavior. I didn't respond. I didn't need to, because that's when I knew. She wasn't just trying to punish me anymore. She was trying to rewrite me, to paint this version of Max who was unreliable, paranoid, vindictive, to convince everyone around me that she was the victim and I was the problem. It was textbook. If she couldn't control the real version of me, she'd create a new one and broadcast it to the world. But what she didn't know, what she still doesn't know, is that I'd been documenting everything. Every message, every email, every attempt to interfere with my job, my housing, my finances, every name she dragged into it, every lie she told. I wasn't just playing defense anymore. I was getting ready to strike back. I spent the next 2 weeks doing something I never thought I'd do. I lawyered up. His name was Trent, not flashy, not aggressive, but sharp as glass and calm like a surgeon. He specialized in family legal disputes, harassment, and digital defamation. After our first meeting, I sent him the full digital dossier I'd compiled. Emails, texts, voicemails, social media screenshots, even the fake lawyer letter. He was stunned by how organized I was. Max, he said, scrolling through the folder, this isn't just petty drama. This is targeted harassment. And if she contacted your employer under false pretenses, that could cross into legal territory real fast. That's when things shifted. I filed for a cease and desist. The letter was clean, factual, emotionless. It cited specific instances of impersonation, financial fraud, attempted defamation, and harassment. It also made clear that any future attempts to contact me, my employer, my landlord, or my friends would lead to escalation, including potential civil suits for damages and defamation. The letter went out. Officially. Certified mail. 3 days later, silence. Then, like a dying fire flaring up one last time, my mom called. I didn't answer, of course. The voicemail was icy and measured, like she was reading from a script. I got your letter. I suppose this is who you are now. It's just sad. You used to be such a sweet boy. I hope one day you'll understand what you've done to this family. Click. And that was it. No apology. No self-reflection. Just another guilt trip wrapped in victimhood. I blocked her number. Changed mine a week later. Updated all my passwords. Got a credit freeze. And removed every single family member from my socials. I even asked HR to set up a gatekeeper flag so that any external communication involving my name would come to me first. They were more than happy to comply. As for Lena, she messaged me 2 months later from a new number. It was short. You were right. She turned on me. I didn't reply. Not out of spite. Just peace. Real peace. The kind you feel when you finally put out the last ember of a house you should have left burning years ago. In the end, Mom didn't get her tropical vacation. She didn't get her money, or her leverage, or her control. All she got was a silence louder than any apology I could have given, and the cold realization that her manipulation didn't work on me anymore. I didn't just walk away. I shut the door. For good. And let me tell you, the air's a lot cleaner on the other side. My name's Kevin. I'm 22 now, but the story I'm about to tell you started when I was 20, right in the final stretch of college. The period where every late night, every missed party, every quiet moment in the library was supposed to finally pay off. I'd kept my head down for years, grinding through my engineering degree while my family threw everything, I mean everything, behind my younger brother, Tyler. He was the golden child, captain of his high school football team, popular, always getting attention for something. And don't get me wrong, he wasn't a bad kid. Just someone who learned early on that the spotlight would always follow him, no matter how dim mine got. I never made a fuss about it. When my parents framed Tyler's C-plus science project and gave it a whole corner of the living room wall, I just nodded and kept walking. When he got a used car at 16 and I had to Uber to my summer job, I told myself, it's just money. You'll earn your own one day. And when he brought home middling grades and still got taken out for steak dinners while I quietly paid my own tuition through scholarships and part-time gigs, I figured they just showed love differently. But the real shift, the fracture that didn't heal, came during Tyler's high school graduation. I had just finished finals that week, completely drained but proud. I'd been nominated for a national engineering award and had lined up a job interview with a top firm in Chicago. Still, I rearranged everything to be home that weekend because Mom kept texting about family time and being there for your brother. So I packed a bag, booked a train, and came home. When I walked through the door that Friday evening, the house was spotless. Streamers, a banner that read, "Congrats, Tyler." Catering trays stacked on the kitchen island. There were two giant coolers in the backyard, one filled with soda and the other with bottles of beer that everyone pretended were just for the adults. Tables and chairs rented, a giant Bluetooth speaker prepped with Tyler's favorite songs. They went all out. Except there wasn't a single photo of me on the wall. I didn't say anything at first. Just figured maybe they wanted it to be his day, and I didn't want to make it about me. But later that night, as I helped Mom carry some desserts into the garage fridge, I asked, "Hey, should I invite some of my friends over too? Some of them live nearby, and I haven't seen them in a while." She didn't even look at me. "Kevin, no. This is Tyler's night. We don't want you stealing his moment." I remember just standing there, frozen, holding a tray of cupcakes like it had suddenly become molten in my hands. That sentence hit me harder than I expected. I hadn't asked for anything. Hadn't even brought up the fact that I was graduating college in just a few weeks, the first in our immediate family to even finish a 4-year degree. I wasn't asking for speeches or banners, just to be seen. But something cracked inside me then. I set the tray down gently, forced a smile, and said, "Then don't expect an invite to mine." She paused, finally looked at me, and laughed like I'd just said something ridiculous. "Kevin, don't be dramatic." But I wasn't. I meant it. The party went on without a hitch. Everyone laughed, danced, cheered when Tyler made his little thanks everyone's speech in the backyard. Dad grilled burgers. Uncle Rich gave Tyler a fat envelope and said something about how proud he was. And I stayed mostly invisible, sipping soda on the porch, watching the lights flicker across the lawn like I was a guest in my own family. After that weekend, I stopped responding to the family group chat. I didn't go home after finals ended. I stayed with my roommate Ben in the city, took on extra hours at the startup where I was interning, and quietly planned something no one would see coming. Graduation for my university was scheduled for mid-June, but I didn't walk across any stage. I declined the ceremony altogether. Instead, I pulled together some savings, reached out to a couple of friends, old friends who hadn't forgotten me, and started organizing something better. Something that wouldn't need a banner to scream my name because it would already be on everyone's lips. It started with a call to my cousin Vanessa. She was a freelance event planner in LA, and though we hadn't talked in a while, she picked up right away and said, "Tell me you're finally letting me throw you something big." I told her I wanted something elegant, something media-worthy. Not for ego, but because if my family wasn't going to acknowledge me, I wanted to make damn sure the rest of the world would. Vanessa didn't even hesitate. "I've got just the place." We ended up booking a rooftop venue in downtown Chicago with a view of the lake. Live jazz band, cocktail bar, local chefs doing tasting menus. And yes, a huge custom banner that read, "Congratulations, Kevin Thomas, class of 2023." It was subtle, tasteful, and absolutely impossible to ignore. Invites went out digitally, to friends, mentors, coworkers. I didn't include a single family member. Not my mom, not my dad, not even Tyler. But I knew word would spread. I made sure it would. A week before the event, I gave Vanessa the green light to invite a handful of local media contacts she'd worked with before, lifestyle bloggers, a journalist from the Tribune, even a couple of influencers who loved covering young success stories. The angle? First-gen college grad celebrates with style after building a six-figure app during school. Which was true, by the way. I'd sold a small prototype app the previous year, and it had made me just enough to make this party possible. The night of the event was surreal. People I hadn't seen in years showed up in suits and dresses, hugging me like I was royalty. My old programming professor gave a toast that nearly made me cry. And just when the sun dipped behind the skyline, Vanessa pulled me aside and said, "You're not gonna believe who just showed up." I turned, and there he was. My cousin Ben, standing under the banner with a drink in hand, grinning like a fool. "Hope you don't mind," he said, holding up his phone. "Just posted a pic. Tagged you and everything. Figured it's about time the family saw what they missed." I didn't stop him. What I didn't expect was for the post to go viral. Not just among friends, but it got picked up. One of the media folks live-streamed part of the evening, and it somehow made its way into a weekend segment on local news. Chicago graduate throws epic rooftop bash after family snub. I didn't even see it air, but someone else did. At 6:42 p.m. the next day, I got a message from an unknown number. "Kevin, we saw the news. Your mom, she fainted. Call us, please." I didn't reply, but that was nothing compared to what came next. 2 hours later, my phone started vibrating nonstop. First it was Tyler, then Dad, then again, then a different number I didn't recognize, probably a relative or maybe someone borrowing Mom's phone. I watched each call come and go, my screen lighting up like a warning beacon in the dark. Then came the texts. "Tyler, what's wrong with you, man? Why didn't you invite us? We had no idea you even graduated." "Dad, you went behind our backs? Made us look like fools on the news? This is not how family handles things." Unknown number. "Your mother collapsed crying. She's inconsolable. Please talk to her." I turned off the phone and slid it under my pillow. I wasn't ready. Not yet. I wanted to enjoy the afterglow a little longer, not out of spite, but because for the first time in a long time, I felt seen. Not as a backup, not as a background character in the Tyler show, but as someone who built something from nothing and made people notice. But even as I lay there staring at the ceiling, that little knot of guilt began to twist in my gut. Not because I regretted anything, but because even after everything, some part of me still wished it hadn't had to come to this. I never wanted to be the guy who made headlines for family drama. I just wanted my own people to say, "We're proud of you." That night, I got a knock on my apartment door. It was Ben, holding 2 coffees. "I figured you weren't gonna sleep," he said, handing one over. "They called me too. Your dad's acting like you committed treason." I laughed softly and shook my head. I gave them what they wanted. Space. They didn't want me stealing the moment, remember? Ben sat down, his eyes sharp in that way only a cousin can look at you. "Kev, you didn't just steal the moment. You redefined it. That party? That was a freaking movie. And everyone knows what they did now." The next morning, I turned my phone back on. The unread message count had ballooned past 50. There were emails now, too. Long ones. Some rambling, some apologetic. But one stood out. A voice memo from Mom. I didn't want to listen. I told myself not to. But curiosity always wins. I hit play. Her voice was shaky, soft, almost unrecognizable. "Kevin, I saw the photos. The video. The banner. Everything. I didn't even know you liked jazz. I didn't know a lot of things, apparently. I'm sorry. I don't know what we did wrong. Or maybe I do, and I just never let myself see it. But please, just call me. Just let me explain." I sat there, staring at nothing. Not angry. Not satisfied. Just numb. Because what do you say to that? When the people who are supposed to lift you up have spent years pretending you're invisible, and then finally notice you, not because they saw your effort, but because the rest of the world did. I didn't respond, but word kept spreading. The video of Vanessa's toast, where she talked about how I worked 2 jobs through college, about the app one built in our dorm, about how I helped tutor her kid in algebra over Zoom. Made it to Twitter. A local college prep program even reached out to ask if I'd speak to their students. Suddenly, people were seeing me for more than the kid who used to do all the chores while Tyler got congratulated for mowing half the lawn. I moved into my new job a week later, a sleek office in the Loop with floor-to-ceiling windows and a team of people who didn't care what my family thought of me. They just wanted to know how I solved a major interface bug in a prototype most undergrads wouldn't even attempt. But my family wasn't done yet. One morning, about 3 weeks later, I got a call from Aunt Denise. She was never the meddling type, which is why I picked up. "Hey, sweetheart," she said cautiously. "I've been meaning to ask, did you know your parents tried to throw you a surprise party?" I blinked. "What?" She sighed. "Yeah, right after the news piece aired, they scrambled. Booked some banquet hall, tried to rush order a banner and everything. Said it was a make-up celebration. But they didn't invite me until the last minute, and I told them it wasn't right. Not after everything." I was stunned, not by the attempt, but by the desperation of it. A rushed, last-ditch gesture to save face, not out of genuine pride, but shame. Public shame. They didn't want me to feel special. They wanted the world to believe they'd always cared. Aunt Denise hesitated, then added, "They're spinning it to the rest of the family like they planned that rooftop party with you all along. That you asked to keep it secret. You might want to get ahead of that." That's when I realized this wasn't about family anymore. This was about legacy, about control. They were rewriting the story, trying to act like they were in on it the whole time, trying to bend the narrative back in their favor. And if I let them, they'd succeed. The same way they'd always succeeded at making me the afterthought. But I had receipts, emails, texts, that voice memo, photos, messages, timeline screenshots. I hadn't meant to collect them. They'd just piled up, one by one, over the years. And now? Now I had the power they never thought I'd hold. And I knew exactly what to do with it. I didn't act right away. I'm not impulsive by nature. Years of walking on eggshells at home had taught me to calculate my moves. Wait for the moment when people were least expecting a response. So instead of reacting, I watched. I scrolled through social media, kept tabs on the comments under my cousin's post, peeked into the family chat thread I hadn't opened in weeks. Sure enough, the rewriting had already begun. Tyler had posted a selfie from my graduation night. Not from the party, obviously, but an old photo of us when we were kids in matching hoodies, captioned, "So proud of my big bro. He's been killing it from day one. Can't believe we got to celebrate him like that. Best night ever." The comments flooded in. "Aunt Marcy, that party looked amazing. Your parents must be so proud. Grandma, I wish someone had told me. I would have loved to be there. Uncle Joe, Kevin deserved every second of it. You all planned that perfectly." Each comment was like a spark landing on dry grass, and my blood boiled. Because none of it was true. None of them had known. No one had planned anything for me. They just didn't want to look bad now that the truth was out, that the quiet, ignored son they barely acknowledged had pulled off something bigger than any of them could have imagined. It wasn't just erasure. It was theft. But I didn't confront anyone. I didn't reply. Instead, I called Vanessa. "You still have the video?" I asked her. She laughed. "I have 3 angles, Kevin." "What? Can you put together a highlight reel? Something short. Just enough to show who planned it, who was there, and who wasn't." Her voice shifted. "You want to post it, don't you?" "Not yet. Just have it ready." The next day, my dad emailed me. Not a text. Not a call. An actual email, like we were co-workers or estranged colleagues. The subject line was "Let's move forward." I opened it with a strange sense of calm, like I already knew what was inside. "Kevin, I know things have been tense. Your mother is still upset, and I won't pretend to understand all your reasons for excluding us from your celebration. That said, we're willing to put the past behind us. Let's have dinner. Just us. No drama. We can talk about your new job, maybe go over plans for a small family celebration. Something intimate. Private. Let me know when you're free." "Dad." "Private. Of course." They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted damage control. A quiet dinner they could reference later when people asked questions. A way to smooth over the cracks in their carefully curated image without ever acknowledging they caused them in the first place. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the email to Vanessa with one line: "Add this to the video." The next call came 2 days later, from Grandma. I hesitated, thumb hovering over decline, but picked up. "Kevin," she said, voice frail but sharp as ever. Honey, I saw that video on Facebook. The one with your party. It was beautiful. Thanks, Grandma, I said carefully. She hesitated. But why didn't you invite your family? I mean, your parents looked so confused when I brought it up. Said they helped organize it. That your cousin just did the decorations. I exhaled. Grandma, did you hear them mention my name once in the weeks leading up to graduation? Did they ever talk about my degree, or my app, or the interviews I was doing? Silence. No, I continued calmly. They didn't, because they didn't care. They told me, to my face, not to steal Tyler's moment. And when I told them not to expect an invite to mine, they laughed. Another pause. Then her voice cracked. That's not what your mom said. I could hear the beginnings of confusion, maybe denial. The feeling of a long-standing narrative breaking down. I didn't want to hurt her. She was the only one who'd ever mailed me actual birthday cards with handwritten notes. But I couldn't let the truth keep drowning under their lies. I'm not trying to start a war, I said. I just want people to stop pretending. And then, like fate had a sense of irony, I got a message from an unexpected name. Ms. Riley, my old high school counselor. Hey Kevin, just wanted to say I saw the graduation party video floating around online. Couldn't be happier for you. You've come so far, and we always knew you had it in you. Funny story. Your mom came by the school last week to ask if we'd share the video on the school's alumni page. Said it was a family collaboration. Thought you should know. That was the final straw. They weren't just lying to relatives now. They were trying to rewrite the entire record, the public memory of my life. My accomplishments. My moment. I felt like a museum exhibit being curated by the very people who ignored me. So I called Vanessa. Post it, I said. You sure? Yeah. Tag me. Make the caption clear. This was for everyone who was never invited, because some people didn't want me to have a moment of my own. That night, the reel went live. It opened with footage of me walking into the rooftop venue, shocked by the lights and faces waiting for me. It cut to the jazz band playing Under the Stars, to the speeches, to Vanessa raising her glass and saying, he did this all on his own. It included the still shot of the invite, clearly marked private, RSVP only, with no parents listed among the guests. And then, as the music softened, it faded to black, with my mom's voice from the voicemail. I didn't even know a lot of things, apparently. By morning, the video had over 100,000 views, and my phone was already blowing up. But what happened next? That's when the real fallout began. The morning after the video dropped, I opened my phone to the usual flurry of notifications. Only this time, they weren't just likes and shares. My inbox was flooded. DMs from classmates I hadn't spoken to in years. Messages from coworkers. Even strangers who'd seen the video reposted by a career advice influencer with 1 million followers. This is how you bet on yourself. But underneath all the noise, the messages I'd expected were right there, waiting like storm clouds. Tyler, you really couldn't let this go, could you? What do you want from us? Blood. Dad, you humiliated this family. Your mother hasn't stopped crying. Was that your goal? Mom, please take it down. I know we've made mistakes, but this isn't fair. That last one stayed unread in my inbox for hours. I just couldn't bring myself to open it. Part of me, a small, fragile part one hated still existed, wanted to believe she meant it, that she finally saw me. Not because I went viral, but because I had been worthy of attention all along. But I'd learned better. Because they weren't upset about what they'd done. They were upset people knew. A few days later, I got a formal email from my dad's lawyer. That's right, lawyer. Apparently, he was threatening to file for defamation if I didn't take down the video and cease spreading falsehoods about the family. I stared at the email for a long time, stunned into silence. My own parents were trying to legally silence me. And yet I laughed. Because they had nothing. The footage was mine. The voice message was real. The photos, the timeline, the emails, all real. My cousin's post from earlier had time-stamped proof of who planned the party and who didn't. And the voicemail from my mom, pleading with me to talk after she saw the news, made it very clear they hadn't been part of anything. I didn't hire a lawyer. I didn't need to. I just replied with one line. Everything in that video is documented truth. Try me. They never responded again. But what followed was worse. The long, silent vacuum of being erased. The family group chat, once chaotic and filled with memes and dinner plans, slowly went quiet. My name wasn't mentioned anymore. Birthdays passed without texts. Holidays came and went without invites. I'd expected the anger. I hadn't expected the emptiness. And yet, I felt freer than ever. I leaned into my new job, building systems that reached more users in a month than my entire college had students. I moved into a condo downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the skyline. I started mentoring other first-gen students, hosted webinars, even gave a TEDx talk about self-worth and silent achievements. But the most satisfying moment? That came a year later. I was back in my hometown for a conference and decided, on a whim, to stop by the local community center, the same one where I used to tutor kids after school for free. It was mostly the same: chipped paint, faded posters, and a couple of familiar faces. One of the staff members pulled me aside and said, "Hey, your dad came here last month. He brought a box of old trophies and photos. Tried to donate them. Said something about preserving family legacy." I raised an eyebrow. "Did you take them?" The guy grinned. "Nah. We told him we only accept things with actual community value." I left with a smile so wide it hurt. A few months after that, I got a wedding invitation from Tyler. Yes, Tyler. It was embossed, formal, and included a little handwritten note. "Let's bury the hatchet. No cameras. Just family." I stared at that card for a long time. Thought about all the times I'd been left out, shut down, told to shrink so he could shine. Thought about the party, the voicemail, the lawyer. And then I did the only thing that made sense. I RSVP'd no. But I didn't stop there. I mailed the card back, along with a framed photo from my rooftop party, signed, "To the brother who once said I shouldn't steal your moment." Don't worry, I made my own. I never heard from him again. As for my parents, the last I heard, they were still telling people I'd grown distant after moving to the city. Still spinning their version of events, holding on to the idea that their silence wasn't cruelty, but tough love. But the truth had already reached the people who mattered. And it reached one more person too, Grandma. She called me out of the blue one chilly October morning. Her voice was frail, but warm. "Kevin," she said, "I watched your TEDx talk. Twice." "Yeah." I cried. Both times. There was a long pause. I could hear her breathing slow, steady. "I didn't know how badly they hurt you. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Thanks, Grandma." She wasn't done. "I left something for you. In my will. It's not much. Just something I hope helps you keep going. And keep being you. Don't let anyone write your story for you again." She passed away 4 months later. When the lawyer read her will, everyone was expecting the usual: split assets, trinkets, maybe a few heirlooms. But one line made every head in the room turn. "To Kevin Thomas, the only one in this family who learned to stand alone, I leave my safe deposit box, its contents, and the full sum of my private savings account." Turns out, Grandma had been quietly saving for decades. When the paperwork settled, the total came out to just under $380,000. The same day I signed the inheritance paperwork, I wrote a check to fund a scholarship in her name. The Thomas Grant, for students who were told they weren't enough. And then I drove home, not to my parents' house, but to my own. I walked out onto my balcony that night, looking over the city lights. No banners, no speeches, just peace. And I realized I never needed their approval, because I had my moment. And no one would ever take that from me again. My name's Matt, I'm 27, and I used to think that if I kept my head down, paid my dues, and didn't stir the pot, my family would eventually start seeing me as more than just the responsible one. You know, the fallback guy, the one who helps without being asked, who lends money just until Friday, who always shows up to fix whatever's broken but never gets invited to anything that's whole. I've spent most of my adult life trying to convince myself that this role, the quiet provider, was something to be proud of. And maybe it was. Until last month. It was a Wednesday evening. I remember because I'd just gotten back from a work trip, bag still at my feet, when I got the group text from my dad. "Family dinner at 6. Be there." Big update. No punctuation, no please. Just a command, like always. I should have said no. Should have made up a meeting, or claimed I was still out of town. But instead, like I always did, I shoved my exhaustion down, threw on a clean shirt, and drove over to my parents' place. The usual suspects were there, Mom bustling in the kitchen like she was feeding royalty, Dad seated at the head of the table like a CEO, and my younger brother Jason slouched at the opposite end, scrolling through his phone like he was allergic to eye contact. Jason's 2 years younger than me, but you'd never guess it by the way he acts. The guy has this talent for doing the absolute least and still getting treated like a hero for breathing. Got kicked out of college twice. Burned through 3 jobs in a year. And somehow, every time he messes up, it becomes someone else's responsibility to catch him. Dinner started off as expected. Small talk about the neighbors, questions about my job that no one really listened to the answers for, and the usual praise session for Jason, who had apparently decided to take a break for his mental health. That's code for he quit his job again because he didn't like getting up before noon. I didn't say anything. I've learned that silence is safer than sarcasm in my family. Then, just as I was about to excuse myself for the night, my dad cleared his throat and gave Jason this little nod. Jason pocketed his phone and leaned back like he was about to drop some life-altering announcement. My stomach sank. So my dad began, stabbing a piece of chicken like it had wronged him. Your brother's moving in with you next week. The sentence dropped like a lead weight. I blinked. What? He needs space, Dad continued, like this had all been agreed upon already. Can't keep living here. It's not healthy for a grown man. And you've got that extra bedroom. Jason didn't even pretend to be surprised. He just smirked and said, try not to touch my stuff, all right? My fork froze halfway to my mouth. I set it down slowly, my heart thudding in my chest. You're sending him to live with me? You're single, my mom chimed in from the kitchen, not even turning around. You've got room. You work from home. You're always saying how quiet your apartment is. It's the perfect situation. That last part hit harder than they probably intended. I had mentioned how peaceful my place was once during a rare moment of vulnerability, and they'd taken that as a sign I was lonely. Not that I enjoyed my space, or that I'd worked hard to create it, but that I was somehow incomplete and in need of chaos. I already pay rent there, Jason added, as if that sealed the deal. Well, not yet, but I will once I get settled. The absurdity of it all was almost funny. Almost. But what really got me wasn't the decision itself. It was how matter-of-fact they all were about it. Like I didn't even need to be consulted. Like it wasn't my apartment, my lease, my life. I wasn't a person to them in that moment. Just a resource. A solution. A spare room with legs. I wanted to shout. To throw my napkin down and walk out. But instead, I just smiled. It was a small smile, tight-lipped and calm, the kind of smile you give someone right before you drop the floor out from under them. Because the truth they didn't know, the one I hadn't told anyone, was that I didn't live in that apartment anymore. I'd moved out last week. See, after the 3rd time my parents tried to guilt-trip me into giving Jason a small loan for his rent, I started thinking about how much of my life wasn't really mine. I had this realization at 2 a.m., sitting in my apartment while Jason crashed on my couch for just a weekend that had turned into 5 days. He'd eaten through my groceries, left dirty dishes in the sink, and invited some girl over who ended up stealing my earbuds. I remember looking around and wondering why I was living like this. Why I was constantly sacrificing my comfort so my brother could continue pretending adulthood was optional. I gave notice to my landlord the next morning. Found a smaller place on the other side of the city, quieter, cheaper, and completely mine. I didn't tell my family because I didn't want the lecture. And because I knew, deep down, they wouldn't notice I'd gone. So now, sitting at the dinner table with their grand announcement still hanging in the air, I just nodded. All right, I said, picking up my fork again. If that's what you think is best. Jason looked smug. My parents looked relieved. And I just ate the rest of my dinner in silence, thinking about how satisfying it was going to be when they finally tried to make that move. Because the lease? It wasn't in my name anymore. And the apartment? Completely empty. I'd even made sure to leave behind just enough furniture to make it look like someone still lived there, for now. They had no idea the entire plan was about to implode on them, and I wasn't going to lift a finger to stop it. Not this time. The fallout began 2 days later, quicker than I expected, honestly. I'd assumed Jason would spend a few more days loafing around our parents' house before finally lumbering over to his new kingdom, but apparently the idea of having a place of his own had ignited something in him. That, or Mom finally got tired of him using her yoga mat as a food tray. He called me first, around 11:30 a.m. I let it ring. Then again, 2 more times. Finally, a text popped up. Hey, you got a spare key? I ignored it. 3 hours later, I got another message. We're outside. You're not here. Still didn't respond. I pictured him and Dad standing in the hallway of my old apartment, probably arguing about whose fault it was they didn't bring a key. The building has a secure front door and no intercom system, So unless someone lets you in, you're stuck outside. And I made very, very sure the property manager wouldn't be doing anyone any favors. By 6 p.m., my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Dad. Call me. Now. I waited. Didn't even open the message. 10 minutes later, I got another. What is going on? I finally responded. Just 2 words. Ask Jason. No reply. Radio silence. The next morning, though, that's when it got really good. I was sipping coffee in my new place, curtains open to the quiet courtyard outside, when I got a call from an unfamiliar number. Normally, I'd ignore it. But curiosity got the better of me. Hello? Is this Matthew Carson? The voice asked. Firm, official, clipped. Who's calling? This is Miranda from Oak Hill Residences Management. I have a situation involving your former unit. Are you still occupying the premises? I grinned. Nope. Moved out last week. Final walkthrough was completed, and lease was terminated. I have the signed release form if you need it. A pause. Then she said, interesting. Because 2 individuals are here right now insisting they live there. One claims to be your brother. Yep, I said, leaning back. That sounds about right. Another pause. They say you gave them permission. I didn't laugh, not out loud. Did they show a lease? Signed contract? Proof of residency? No. Just verbal claims. Then I'd recommend calling the police, I said, still calm. They're trespassing. The silence that followed was beautiful. We'll handle it, she said tightly. Thank you, Mr. Carson. That afternoon, my phone finally exploded. Missed calls from Dad. From Mom. Even Jason, who never calls, always prefers passive-aggressive texts. The voicemails were golden. First one from Dad. What did you do? They're saying you're not the tenant anymore. How is that possible? Next one. Mom, more panicked. Matt, you didn't tell us you moved. Jason's stuck out here. The landlord says he has no right to be there. What's going on? Then, the piece de resistance, Jason's voicemail, equal parts indignant and furious. Dude, what's wrong, Tayo? You knew we were coming. You let me pack all my stuff and drive across town, and the place is empty. You took the couch? Seriously. Oh, right. I forgot to mention, I'd sold most of the furniture before leaving. The only thing I left behind was an ancient bookshelf with a busted leg, a plastic fork in the kitchen drawer, and a single sticky note on the fridge that said, good luck. I gave it 2 days before the storm hit face to face. Sure enough, Sunday dinner, the weekly family bonding obligation, was an ambush waiting to happen. I walked into my parents' house like nothing had happened, greeted Mom with a kiss on the cheek, nodded to Dad, and even smiled at Jason, who looked like a man freshly evicted from a fantasy. He didn't speak, just glared. Dinner started quiet. Too quiet. You know that eerie calm before a fight breaks out? That was the vibe. It was Dad who cracked first. Why didn't you tell us you moved? He said, stabbing at his roast beef like it owed him money. I shrugged. Didn't think anyone would care. You knew your brother was supposed to move in. No, I said slowly, deliberately. You decided my brother was supposed to move in. No one asked me. He's your family, Mom snapped. You had the space. What were you planning to do? Just let him be homeless? Jason muttered, you're such a selfish prick. That got me. Not because it hurt. I'd heard worse from him, but because of how entitled it was. Like I had wronged him by not letting him live rent-free in a place I no longer lived in. So I leaned back, set my fork down, and looked directly at him. You know, I used to wonder why you hated responsibility so much. Now I realize, it's because no one ever made you feel the consequences. Oh, please, he scoffed. You think you're better than everyone just because you pay your bills on time? No, I said. I think I'm better than someone who waits until they're outside a locked door to ask where the key is. Dad slammed his napkin down. Enough. You should have told us. And you? I said, eyes on him, should have asked. But you don't ask me things. You assign me duties. You assume I'll just roll over and say yes. And you don't even thank me. You just move on to the next favor. Mom looked stunned. Jason muttered something under his breath. I didn't care. I moved, I said, voice calm. I didn't tell you because I didn't want the pressure. I didn't want the guilt. I didn't want to be used again. I needed a clean break. And if you think that's selfish, maybe take a look at what you were asking me to give up and who you were asking me to give it to. The room went silent. Even the air felt heavier. I stood up, folded my napkin, and looked around at the stunned faces. I'm not angry, but I'm done being your backup plan. Then I walked out. The silence after that dinner didn't last long. 3 days later, the group chat. normally used for birthday announcements and Mom's passive-aggressive reminders, lit up like a firework. Jason had gone off. The first message came in at 8:17 a.m., which for Jason was basically sunrise. Jason texted, "Wow, real classy, Matt. Kicking your own brother to the curb. I've been sleeping on the couch for a week." Mom texted, "Jason, keep this private. We can talk later." Jason texted, "No, they should all know. Matt's the golden boy until he's asked to do something real for this family." I didn't reply. Neither did Dad, not right away. I imagine he was letting the drama stew while drafting some sanctimonious speech in his head. But then, my cousin Laura, who usually stays out of the mess, chimed in. Laura texted, "You were asked to live rent-free in Matt's place and just assumed it would happen? He doesn't owe you that." Jason texted, "Stay out of it, Laura." Laura texted, "Just saying. If I were Matt, I'd be done too." I wish I could say the whole family backed me up like that, but Laura was the exception. Within an hour, I had 3 missed calls from my aunt, 1 from Grandma, and a barrage of messages from relatives I hadn't heard from since Dad's 60th birthday, all politely implying I should reconsider for the sake of peace. Peace. The same peace I'd spent years quietly buying with time, favors, and rent payments. The same peace I was now finally reclaiming. And they were furious I had the nerve to do it. I didn't answer anyone that day. I focused on work, on cleaning, on a grocery run that took way longer than it needed to. And that night, when I finally got back home, I found a letter. Not an email. A letter. Handwritten, folded once, tucked under my door like some kind of declaration of war. It was from Dad. "No, dear Matt. No love, Dad." Just 2 pages of tightly written disappointment. How I had embarrassed the family. How Jason was going through a difficult time and I had kicked him while he was down. How I should have come to them first instead of making a scene. And at the end, "You're better than this." That line hit me in a weird way. Not because I believed it, but because it was such a manipulative little twist. The guilt grenade. A subtle attempt to reframe everything I did as cruel rather than necessary. Like I just lost my moral high ground by standing up for myself. I stared at the letter for a long time. Then I grabbed a pen, flipped the last page over, and wrote 3 words in the margin. "I finally am." The next day, I dropped it in their mailbox. A few days after that, I found out Jason had tried to convince the apartment management to let him stay until things got sorted out. He claimed he had verbal permission and even tried showing them old photos of himself inside the unit, lounging on my couch like a king. It didn't work. The building had already rented the place to a new tenant, someone who was not thrilled to find Jason loitering in the stairwell like a moody raccoon. I didn't hear this from Jason, of course. He blocked me. I heard it from Miranda, the manager, who called me to give me the update, and ended the call with a dry, "Your brother isn't welcome on the premises anymore." I thanked her, and that was that. Until the family meeting. Yeah, that happened. Mom texted me that Sunday. "Dinner. Everyone's coming. It's time we all talked like adults." I almost didn't go. But a part of me, the stubborn part that had been sitting in silence for years, wanted to see their faces. To look them in the eyes, not with anger or bitterness, but with calm resolve. To show them I wasn't folding this time. So I went. Same house. Same kitchen. Same long oak dining table we'd gathered around every Thanksgiving since I was 10. Jason was already there, sitting stiffly at one end. He didn't look at me when I walked in. Dad was by the window, arms crossed. Mom was nervously slicing carrots she didn't need to slice. And 2 chairs had been set aside. One for me, one for the empty idea of obligation they still thought they could guilt me into honoring. "Matt," Dad said the moment I walked in. "Sit." I didn't. "I want to say something first," I said. "Just so we're clear before this turns into another intervention disguised as a meal." Mom looked up, startled. Dad raised an eyebrow. Jason, to his credit, kept his mouth shut. "I'm not angry," I said, "but I'm also not apologizing. I didn't betray anyone. I didn't sabotage Jason. I moved out because I needed space. And you decided, without asking, that I didn't deserve that space. You made your brother homeless," Mom said, softly but firmly. "No," I said. "He made himself homeless by assuming someone else's life was his to live in." Jason finally spoke. "You could have warned me." "I did," I said. "When you were crashing on my couch and left pizza boxes on my bookshelf. When you walked around like you owned the place. When you never once said thank you. That was your warning." The room went still. And then Dad said the thing that changed everything. You used to be reliable. That one stung. Because it was true. I had been. And I finally understood why that word always felt like both a compliment and a curse. I stared at my dad for a few seconds after he said it. You used to be reliable. The words echoed in my chest, not because they surprised me, but because they confirmed what I'd been suspecting for years. I wasn't a son to him. I was a service. When the Wi-Fi broke, when someone needed help moving, when Jason needed bail money, when the mortgage was short, when the guest room needed painting, it was always me. Never once with a thank you. Never once with an ounce of respect. Just the expectation that I'd say sure and smile while doing it. I exhaled, sat down slowly, and looked at my father across the table. You're right, I said. I used to be reliable. Reliable like a spare tire. Reliable like the quiet background noise no one notices until it's gone. He narrowed his eyes. Don't twist my words. I'm not. I'm just saying I finally understand what you really meant by reliable. You meant convenient. Predictable. Silent. Mad. Mom tried to cut in, but I raised a hand gently. No, Mom. Please. Let me finish this, just once. She closed her mouth, but her eyes were pleading. Jason was still glaring at me, arms crossed, like this was a courtroom and he was the plaintiff. I moved out because I realized I wasn't living my own life. I was living everyone else's. Paying bills that weren't mine. Fixing problems I didn't create. Giving time I never got back. And every time I asked for a little space, a little respect, I was told I was being selfish. My voice cracked a little there, but I kept going. I let Jason stay with me even after he brought strangers into my apartment. I loaned him money even after he promised. 3 times, he'd pay me back and never did. And when I finally needed a break, when I decided to move and not tell anyone so I could breathe for a second, the first thing this family did was try to hand over my life to him again. Jason finally snapped. You think you're better than us now just because you moved into some tiny apartment across town? No, I said. I think I'm finally equal. Because for once, I made a choice that was about me. Not about patching your mistakes. Oh, grow up. No, you grow up, Jason. My tone sharpened, and he actually flinched. You're 25 years old and still act like the world owes you a soft place to land. You've never held a job for more than 6 months. You treat people like furniture, useful until they tell you no. And the worst part? You don't even realize how lucky you've been. Because if I'd behaved half as recklessly as you, Mom and Dad would have disowned me years ago. Jason started to say something, but I held up a hand again. And you know what? That's not even your fault. It's theirs. Now Dad sat up straighter. Excuse me. You made him this way. You protected him from every consequence, covered every mess, blamed everyone else for his mistakes, and used me as your solution. You told me it was my duty to help him, but you never once told him it was his duty to grow up. That's enough, Dad growled. No, I said calmly. Not yet. I turned to Mom. You once told me that Jason was going through a rough patch. You said it 3 years ago, and again 2 months ago. At what point does a patch stop being rough and just become the road? You told me I was the strong one, the dependable one. And you're right. But being strong doesn't mean being a doormat. She didn't answer. She just looked down at her lap. I stood up. I didn't come here to ask for an apology. I didn't even come to explain. I came to set a boundary. Jason scoffed. What are you, a therapist now? No, I said, turning to him one last time. Just someone who's done enabling you. Dad's face was red now, but he wasn't yelling. He was clenching his jaw, that silent kind of rage that used to scare me when I was younger. Not anymore. If you all want to pretend like I'm the villain for choosing peace, that's fine. I won't argue with you. But don't expect me to clean up this mess next time. Jason is not my responsibility. This family's problems are not my responsibility. And from now on, my silence won't be either. With that, I walked to the door. Matt, Mom called softly behind me. Please don't leave like this. I paused, hand on the doorknob. Then how should I leave? No one answered. So I walked out. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty about it. It's been 6 months since that dinner. I haven't spoken to Jason. He moved in with some old friend of his, and last I heard, he got fired from yet another job and trashed the guy's place before skipping out. Apparently, he owes 2 months of rent and left behind a cat he borrowed from an ex-classic Jason. Dad sent me a single email 2 weeks after our blow-up. No subject line, just a brief message. If you ever want to talk, I'll be here. I didn't reply. Mom calls occasionally, mostly short, polite updates. She asks how I'm doing, tells me about cousins, then carefully avoids any mention of Jason. I think, maybe, she finally started realizing the difference between support and exploitation. As for me, I still live in that small apartment with the courtyard view. I replaced the old couch with a secondhand leather one, painted the walls a warm beige, and bought plants I actually remember to water. I started cooking again. I sleep through the night. I even adopted a rescue dog named Bruno. He's quiet, loyal, and the only roommate I've ever had who doesn't steal my food or crash on my couch for weeks. And you know what? I'm happy. Not the dramatic movie ending kind of happy. Just stable, peaceful, whole. Some nights, I think about how long I let myself stay in a role that hurt me, just because it felt familiar. About how many times I let silence buy me temporary peace at the cost of my own dignity. But then I remind myself, I changed the ending. I didn't just walk away. I closed the door, and I locked it. I'm Josh, 32, and if you've ever been the family afterthought, the extra chair, the "oh right, he's here" relative, then you'll understand exactly how this story starts. My family has always had a strange talent, the uncanny ability to make me feel like I never quite belonged. I wasn't the golden child, not the troublemaker, not the baby. I was the placeholder, the one who showed up, smiled politely, and quietly picked up the check. I didn't explode or argue. I just existed, which, in my family, seemed to offend them more than anything else. It wasn't always like that. Growing up, I used to think we were normal. Dinners together, vacations, even some Christmas mornings where I felt genuinely happy. But somewhere along the way, maybe after my dad left or maybe after my older brother started making six figures and my mom decided he could do no wrong, I stopped being part of the picture and started becoming background noise. I moved out at 19, put myself through school, and worked quietly up the ranks at a mid-sized logistics firm. Now I make good money, but you'd never know it from the way they treat me. If anything, the better I did, the colder they became. As if success was something I wasn't allowed to have, or worse, something they were entitled to benefit from without acknowledging the effort I put in. The latest insult came wrapped in white linen napkins and a $3,600 bill. My cousin Melanie, my aunt's youngest daughter, was having an engagement dinner. Not the wedding, mind you. Just an engagement dinner. Because apparently proposing with a ring you could probably see from space wasn't enough of a spectacle. My aunt, who has never said a kind word to me that wasn't about borrowing money, decided it was going to be a family-sponsored event, which is code in our family for Josh is paying for it. I found out I was invited not from a call or a text, but from a forwarded email. No greeting. No, hope you can make it. Just the time, date, and location, and it don't be late, added in by my mom in the most passive-aggressive tone you can imagine. I stared at the screen for a while, debating if I even wanted to go. I hadn't seen most of them in over a year. The last time I did, my mom introduced me to a friend as the one who's still single, still renting, and still doesn't visit enough. She said it like a joke. I didn't laugh. But despite every fiber in me saying stay home, I went. I don't even know why. Maybe some small part of me still hoped they'd acknowledge me. Or maybe I just wanted to prove to myself that I was past caring what they thought. The restaurant was upscale, not quite Michelin-starred, but definitely out of reach for most of my family if they weren't pretending to be something they weren't. I showed up 15 minutes early, in a navy blazer and pressed slacks, trying to at least look like I belonged. The hostess asked for my name, then gave me a confused look before handing me a plastic wristband. Buffet wristband, she said, gesturing to a small corner near the back where a few silver trays sat under dim lighting. I blinked. Isn't this a seated dinner? She checked her list. You're with the Gomez party, right? It says here you're on the kids list. I gave her a tight-lipped smile, thanked her, and made my way inside. The room was bright, filled with laughter and clinking glasses. Long tables were set up in a U-shape around a flower-adorned centerpiece, where Melanie and her fiancé were taking photos. At the head of the U was the grown-up table, reserved for the so-called inner circle. My mom, my aunt, my brother and his wife, a few extended cousins. All seated, all sipping champagne. My chair wasn't there. Josh. Over here, my mom called, waving like she was hailing a cab. She gestured toward a fold-out table with uneven legs in the back, surrounded by teenagers and younger cousins. You can sit with the kids, grown-ups are at that table, she snapped, tossing me a plastic fork still wrapped in thin napkin. I stared at it. My aunt, Aunt Linda, The one who still owes me $2,000 from 2019, burst into laughter. Just be glad we let you come this time, she said, eyes twinkling with mockery. I didn't say a word. I took my seat. The conversations at my table were about TikToks, college rejections, and who vaped behind the school gym. I sipped my water and nibbled on dry chicken that had clearly been sitting out too long. No one from the head table came by. Not once. I was invisible. At some point, my brother raised a toast. To Melanie and Jason. May your love be as strong as your Instagram game. Everyone laughed. I clapped once or twice, out of politeness. I wanted to leave, but something stopped me. Call it curiosity, call it spite. I stayed. Toward the end of the night, while people were mingling and the DJ played generic pop in the background, the event manager walked over to me. He was tall, balding, and looked exhausted. He leaned down, checked a clipboard, and said, "Hey, just confirming, you're covering the $3,600 balance tonight, right?" I blinked. "Sorry." He flipped the page and showed me. This was the agreement. $1,500 deposit already paid, and the remaining $3,600 is due by close. It's under your name. My stomach dropped. Who gave you my name? Linda Gomez, he said flatly. She said you were the one organizing the payment. Said it was your gift to the family. For a second, I couldn't speak. I looked toward the head table. My mom was laughing, swirling wine in a glass, while my aunt patted her on the back. I wasn't even surprised. I just felt empty, then calm. I smiled, stood up slowly, and pointed toward them. "Ask the grown-ups," I said. The event manager raised an eyebrow. "So you're not?" "No," I cut him off. "I'm just the guy with the plastic fork." He stared at me for a beat, then nodded once and walked off. I gathered my blazer, straightened the sleeves, and walked calmly out the side door, unnoticed, unmissed. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I sat in my car across the street with the engine off and the windows cracked just enough to hear the low thump of bass from inside the venue. I watched through the windshield as servers carried trays of half-eaten cake and glasses of Prosecco, as families posed for one last round of photos in front of the banner that read, "Forever Starts Now." It was almost poetic, a room full of people celebrating love and family, while simultaneously ostracizing one of their own like it was a group tradition. I should have been angry. I should have felt some massive, burning surge of betrayal. But the truth? I didn't feel much of anything at all. Just tired. Tired of playing along. Tired of swallowing my pride for people who saw me as a wallet, not a relative. My phone buzzed once, a message from my brother. "Nice of you to leave early. Mom says you're being dramatic again." I let out a dry laugh. Dramatic. Right. As if being treated like a second-class citizen at a party you weren't even properly invited to, then being slapped with a $3,600 surprise bill, was just part of the family fun. That was the moment something in me finally clicked. Not a snap. More like a quiet shift. A decision. I pulled up my banking app and scrolled to the shared accounts I'd foolishly agreed to help manage years ago. You see, while my family had a habit of mocking me to my face, they had no issue linking their problems to my name behind closed doors. My mom's utilities? Under my account. She said it was just until she fixed her credit. My aunt's emergency dental surgery? I'd co-signed the loan. My brother's second honeymoon after blowing the budget on VIP upgrades. My credit card. They always said they'd pay me back. They never did. So I froze them. Not out of spite. Out of clarity. I went one by one. Electric, gas, cable, mobile phones. All the accounts I was quietly paying for because family helps family. I turned them off, canceled them, removed my name, and in the cases where I could, scheduled official account closures. Then I opened a new bank account under a different branch and began transferring my funds out. Every single dollar. Gone from anything they could access. Then came the part that felt just right. I called the event venue. A polite woman named Clarissa answered. I told her I'd been listed as the payer for a dinner I never agreed to host. I asked if there was a signed document under my name. There wasn't. "Ma'am," I said calmly, "I never authorized that charge. I won't be paying it. And if my name is used again without consent, I'll be getting my lawyer involved." Clarissa stammered, apologized, and said she'd take it up with the woman who made the booking. I thanked her, hung up, and finally drove home. The fallout started the next morning. 7:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. A group text. "Josh, the venue says the payment bounced. What's going on?" 7:29 a.m., My mom sent a separate message. Why are the lights not working? Did something happen with the electric bill? 7:34 a.m. Aunt Linda. I'm being told my credit is frozen because of you. This is completely unfair. By 8:15 a.m., I had 27 unread messages, 3 voicemails, and 2 missed calls from my brother. But the real panic set in when Melanie, the bride-to-be, called me directly. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Josh. Her voice was already tight, as if holding back tears. I'm so sorry about how you were treated. I didn't know they put your name down for the bill. It's just, the venue won't release the photos until we settle, and they say your name's on the account. Could you, maybe just cover it, and we'll sort it out later? I paused. I sat at a fold-out table, Mel. I said, my tone flat. With a plastic fork. You posted 100 photos, and I wasn't in one. Why would I cover it? She sputtered. I didn't mean to exclude you, I swear. It was my mom, and Auntie Linda, and… Ask the grown-ups, I said, and hung up. That night, my phone blew up again, this time with a different tone. My mom started with guilt. I raised you better than this. Don't punish everyone for one silly misunderstanding. Then came my brother. You're overreacting. They're old. They joke around. Don't ruin the family over this. But then Aunt Linda escalated. If you don't fix this, I'm telling people you committed fraud on my accounts. That was the final straw. I screenshotted every email and document showing her consent, every form she signed when I co-signed that loan. Then I sent them all, to her, to my mom, and, for good measure, to my lawyer, who I CC'd with a polite note. Hi, Mark. Just making sure you're aware of the threats being made toward me in relation to shared financial accounts. Silence. For 2 days, not a single word. Then the apology text trickled in. Weak ones. Conditional ones. Sorry if you felt excluded. We didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. Let's just talk this out. But the best message, the one that truly made me sit back and smile, came from Clarissa, the event manager. She forwarded an email from my aunt, frantically asking to put the remaining $3,600 on her own card. It bounced 3 times. According to Clarissa's note, the balance is still outstanding. We've begun adding late fees. I leaned back in my chair, sipping coffee, and felt a strange peace I hadn't known in years. I wasn't the wallet anymore. I wasn't the placeholder. I was just done. And then, just when I thought it was over, just when I was getting used to the sound of silence, a knock came at my door. It was my mom, red-faced, eyes puffy, holding an envelope. And that is where things really started to unravel. I stared at the door for a long moment before opening it. There was a part of me, small, childish maybe, that still hoped this was going to be the moment. That my mom was going to say something real. Something like, I'm sorry. We treated you horribly. We took you for granted. We were wrong. But the moment I opened the door and saw her face, I knew better. She wasn't here for reconciliation. She was here for damage control. Josh, she said, giving me a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. Can we talk? She held up the envelope like it was some kind of peace offering. I didn't say anything. Just stepped aside, letting her walk in. She moved like someone who owned the place, like this was still her territory, even though she hadn't visited once since I bought it 3 years ago. She sat on the edge of the couch like she was perched on a throne that didn't fit her anymore. She handed me the envelope. I opened it, expecting a handwritten note or a check. It was a printout of the venue invoice. Unpaid. $3,600, plus a $400 late fee. I looked at her. She cleared her throat, clasped her hands like she was praying, and gave me this carefully rehearsed sigh. I know things got tense, but this has gone too far, she began. We're family, Josh. And families don't punish each other like this. I said nothing. She continued. Your aunt's credit is frozen. Your brother can't use his business card. And Melanie's crying every night because her photos are being held hostage. And for what? Because someone made a seating chart error. I raised an eyebrow. A seating chart error? She waved her hand like that detail was beneath her. Look, we all say things in the moment. Your aunt made a joke. You took it too personally. Fine. But dragging this out, canceling accounts, calling lawyers, that's not the mature way to handle things. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. You tossed me a plastic fork and told me to sit with the kids. You made me pay for your gas bill last month without asking. And then you put my name down for a bill you never told me about. That's not a joke. That's using someone. She blinked. It's not like you can't afford it. There it was. That sentence. That thing they always fall back on. The justification. He has money. He doesn't have a wife or kids. He's fine. So let's take more. You didn't even ask, I said quietly. You just assumed I'd cover it. Like always. She sighed again, standing now, trying to shift the dynamic. I know we haven't always made you feel included, but you make it hard, Josh. You isolate yourself. You don't come to things. You never open up. Maybe if you tried harder, we wouldn't have these issues. Tried harder. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream. I'd spent years trying. Showing up to events I wasn't welcome at. Sending birthday gifts that got no thank yous. Paying bills that no one remembered. And here she was, turning it back on me like I hadn't done enough. Instead, I just looked her in the eye and asked, if I had said no to the bill before the dinner, would you have uninvited me? She didn't answer. Her silence was all I needed. She tried to pivot. Look, I don't have the money to pay this. And neither does your aunt. The venue's threatening legal action. You want Melanie to start her marriage in debt. I tilted my head. So you do want me to pay it? No, she said too quickly. I'm asking you to help. To do the right thing. I stepped forward, took the invoice, and slowly ripped it in half. Not out of anger, deliberately, slowly. A controlled break. Her mouth fell open. Josh, I'm not your wallet, I said, my voice low but steady. I'm not your safety net. I'm not your scapegoat. I'm your son. But I don't think you've seen me that way in years. She scoffed. So what? You're cutting us all off? Over a party? I shook my head. Not over a party. Over a pattern. One I'm finally done participating in. She stood frozen for a moment. Then, like she couldn't handle being on the back foot, she reached for the classic script. The one she'd used when I was a teenager and didn't want to lend her my paycheck for groceries she never bought. You think you're so perfect, huh? You think money makes you better than the rest of us? You're just bitter. You've always been bitter. I nodded. Maybe. But I'm not broke. And I'm not begging my son to fix a mess I created. That one landed. She stepped back like she'd been slapped, blinking too fast. Get out, Mom. She opened her mouth again, probably to say something sharp, something designed to cut, but saw the look in my eyes and stopped. She left without another word. That was 3 days ago. Since then, the silence has been deafening. No group chats. No late-night passive-aggressive messages. Just stillness. I haven't heard from my brother, or my aunt, or Melanie. I imagine they're scrambling to figure out how to pay the bill. Or maybe they're too embarrassed. Maybe, just maybe, they're finally starting to understand that I'm not their backup plan. But last night, I got a new text from an unknown number. Josh? It's Jason, Melanie's fiancé. I think we need to talk. I didn't know half the stuff they did to you. Please, meet me. That threw me. Because Jason was never really in the mix. He always seemed quiet, just going with the flow. If he's reaching out to me, something's changed. Something big. And if I know anything about my family, they're not going down without a scene. I debated for a long time whether or not to respond to Jason's message. Part of me felt like it wasn't worth it, that whatever he had to say would just be more of the same. Excuses, deflections, half apologies. But another part of me, the one that remembered all the years I sat through birthdays alone at the kiddie table and paid bills behind the scenes like a ghost accountant, wanted to hear it. Maybe not for closure, but for confirmation. I needed to see, with my own eyes, whether there was anyone left in that tangled mess of a family tree who still had a shred of decency. So I told him to meet me at a local coffee shop, neutral ground, public, no drama. Or so I hoped. He showed up exactly on time, dressed in a clean button-down and jeans. He looked nervous, which surprised me. Jason had always seemed laid back, almost detached from the rest of the family circus. He was one of those people you didn't notice until he spoke, and even then, you weren't sure he had anything to say. But as soon as he sat down, I could tell something was different. His shoulders were tense. His hands clenched the coffee cup like it was anchoring him. Thanks for meeting me, he said quietly. I nodded, waiting. He looked around like he wanted to be absolutely sure no one else could hear, then leaned in slightly. I just need to say something. I didn't know, I truly didn't know what they were doing to you. Until recently. I said nothing, letting him keep going. When Melanie first told me about the engagement party, I thought your name was on the invoice because you offered. She told me you were covering it as a surprise gift. That's what your mom and Linda said, too. I didn't question it. He shook his head. But after the party, when everything blew up, and I saw how upset Melanie was, I started looking through the emails. I saw the invoice changes. The name edits. The part where your aunt forwarded your contact info to the venue without your permission. My expression didn't change, but something in my chest tightened. I already suspected it, but hearing it confirmed that they deliberately changed the invoice to put it under my name still made me feel like I'd been punched in the gut. Jason looked genuinely ashamed. I confronted Melanie. She broke down crying. Said she didn't want to ask you to pay, but her mom told her you wouldn't mind, that you had money and this was your way of being included. Melanie tried to believe it, but when she saw you sitting in the back, she knew. She still didn't do anything, I said flatly. I know, he whispered. She regrets it. But the worst part? After you walked out, they all started laughing. Like it was some prank you didn't take well. Your mom said you always made things about you. Your aunt called you Mr. Credit Score. I felt my jaw clench. Jason noticed. That's when I realized. I don't want to marry into this. That caught me off guard. What do you mean? I called off the engagement yesterday, he said, eyes down. Melanie's devastated. But I told her, if she couldn't see what was wrong until it exploded, and if she was okay with treating people like that, then we had bigger problems than a party. I leaned back in my chair, absorbing it. I didn't expect him to go that far. She said she was raised to think money meant love, he said bitterly. That whoever paid cared. And if you didn't pay, you didn't care enough. And I told her that's the most backwards thing I've ever heard. He paused. I'm not here to ask you for anything, Josh. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. And that I saw it, all of it. You're not crazy. You weren't being dramatic. You were being used. I exhaled slowly. For the first time in a while, I felt something loosen in my chest. Like I'd been carrying around this invisible weight, and someone finally acknowledged it existed. Thank you, I said simply. We didn't talk much after that. He left quietly, and I never saw him again. But word travels fast in our family, especially when someone does something scandalous, like canceling a wedding that's already been posted about on social media for 6 months. The text came back in waves. My mom, are you happy now? You ruined Melanie's life. You embarrassed us. My brother, you seriously need help. No wonder you're alone. Aunt Linda, you'll regret this. One day you'll need family and we won't be there. To each of them, I replied the same thing. Good. I blocked them all after that. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel conflicted. I just felt done. Like a door had closed and I didn't have to keep knocking, hoping someone on the other side would finally let me in. In the weeks that followed, I went through every remaining tie. I sold the car I'd co-signed with my brother. I closed the emergency credit line my mom had access to. I even canceled the joint Spotify account they were all piggybacking on because, honestly, if you're going to cut someone out of your life, cut all the strings. And something amazing happened. My life got quiet. No more guilt-tripping phone calls. No more vague invitations that came with unspoken price tags. Just peace. Real peace. I spent more time with friends, real friends, the kind who asked how you were without needing something. I picked up an old hobby again, photography. Started hiking on weekends. Learned to cook something other than pasta and eggs. I even began volunteering once a week at a local shelter, helping with logistics and donation drives. It felt good to do things for people who appreciated it, not expected it. And then, one Sunday morning, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, but the handwriting was familiar. It was from my grandma, the only one in the family who had always treated me with dignity, who lived in a small town 2 hours away and hadn't made it to the party due to health reasons. The letter was short. Josh, heard about the party. Heard what you did. Good. You deserved better than them. Always have. Come visit me. I made your favorite cookies. Love, Grandma. I laughed right there at the mailbox as the wind whipped the edges of the paper. And that night, I drove to her house with a smile on my face and a full tank of gas, paid for with my own money, for once, just for me. No plastic forks. No kiddie tables. No bill at the end. Just a chair waiting by the fire, next to someone who always knew my worth, even when the rest of them pretended not to. I wasn't the placeholder anymore. I was finally home. My name's Adrian, I'm 34, and I've been the designated fixer in my family since I was old enough to understand what that word meant. You know the type, the one who quietly steps in with a checkbook when things go wrong, who smooths over fights, who always shows up even when nobody else does. I've spent years filling that role, not because I wanted praise or recognition, but because I honestly believe that's what family did. You supported each other, even when it wasn't convenient. Especially then. That belief stuck with me, even after years of being the afterthought, the plus one, In every family photo squeezed in on the edge, half cropped out, while my younger sister Emily stood dead center, flanked by mom and dad like she was the sun we all revolved around. Emily's the golden child. Always has been. Ever since she was little, the family narrative orbited around her milestones, her ballet recitals, her grades, her college acceptances, her relationships. When she got engaged to Jordan, a guy from an old money family with a last name that carried weight in their social circles, it was like a coronation. Suddenly, everything became about impressing his side. My mom was over the moon. She talked about connections, about how this wedding would be a statement, about how we needed to show that our family could keep up. I mostly stayed quiet, nodding when asked, helping where I could. I didn't see the point in making waves. I was the first one Emily called when the engagement was official. Not to gush, not to ask me to be in the wedding party, but because she needed help with the deposit for the venue. It's just to lock in the date, she said. Jordan's parents are covering the rest. You'll get it back. She didn't ask if I was okay with it. She knew I had the money. I always had the money. And like a fool, I wired her $8,000 that same night. Then came the catering. A last-minute change, apparently. The initial vendor wasn't elevated enough. She called me at 10 p.m., crying, saying Jordan's mom had threatened to move the whole thing to a country club if the food didn't match their standards. I covered the difference. Another $4,500. Then the photographer. Then the florist. Then the audio setup for the ceremony, something about string quartets needing special mics. Piece by piece, the wedding started to look more like a royal gala than anything Emily could have dreamed up on her own. And I kept paying. I didn't even question it until I caught Mom bragging on a family group call. She was going on about how lucky Emily was that Jordan's family was so generous, how they really came through, and how she couldn't believe what an incredible gift they were giving her daughter. I waited for someone to mention my name. They didn't. I said nothing. That silence became a pattern. I wasn't invited to the tasting, or the dress fitting, or the rehearsal dinner plans. When I asked, Mom gave me vague answers. "Oh, it's just for the immediate families," she said once. Another time, "You wouldn't enjoy these things, Adrian. It's all frilly nonsense." I told myself I didn't care. I wasn't in it for the praise. But still, it stung. Then, 2 weeks before the wedding, I got a text. Not a call. Not a conversation. Just a flat, clinical message from my mom. "You're not coming to the wedding. Emily's in-laws think it's best if you sit this one out. No hard feelings." I stared at my phone for a full minute before it registered. I thought it was a joke. Some weird, tone-deaf way of saying I didn't need to wear a suit or something. But no. I called her. Straight to voicemail. I called Emily. Same. I texted both of them. Nothing. 3 hours later, I got a follow-up from Mom. "Please respect their wishes. It's not personal. Not personal." I sat in the dark for a while after that, phone still in hand, thinking about every dollar I'd sent, every event I'd been excluded from, every time I'd swallowed that little voice in my head whispering that something wasn't right. I remembered the first time Emily borrowed money from me. She was 20 and late on rent. I didn't even blink. Or the time our dad needed a new water heater and I paid for it because the check from his seasonal job hadn't come in yet. I thought about all the birthdays I spent alone because they were busy or traveling or just forgot. And I remembered the voicemail from my aunt last year, the one where she said, "You really hold this family together, you know that?" Funny. I wasn't even good enough for the background of a photo now. I replied to the text, "Copy that." That's all I said. No argument. No guilt. No begging for inclusion. Just quiet agreement. And then I went on my laptop. The first thing I did was call the venue. The reservation was in my name. I'd been the one to sign the contract and make the deposit. I asked them what would happen if I canceled. They were polite, if a bit confused. "You're well within the window," they said. There'd be a partial refund, but the date would be released immediately. I canceled it. Next, the caterer. Same situation. They had my card on file, my signature. I asked for the cancellation terms. I got a partial refund there too. Photographer? Gone. DJ? Done. Florist? They were actually relieved. Apparently, Emily had been tweaking the arrangements every other day, and they were starting to lose patience. By the time I was finished, everything they thought was locked in had vanished. But I didn't tell them. I didn't say a word. I just let the silence stretch. A few days passed. Then a week. The wedding was set for Saturday. I knew they'd find out eventually, just not from me. I figured they'd either be too distracted to notice or too arrogant to imagine that I'd actually walk away. That's the thing about being the reliable one. People assume you'll keep showing up no matter how many times they shut the door in your face. The silence was almost peaceful until the day of the wedding. That morning, I went for a walk. Left my phone behind. No news. No social media. Just the sound of leaves crunching under my feet and the distant hum of traffic. I took my time getting back. I wanted the distance. I wanted the space between me and whatever chaos was unraveling. Because I knew that somewhere, right about now, guests were arriving to a locked venue with no chairs, no food, no music, no flowers. I imagined Jordan's mother pacing, Emily crying, my mom trying to reach me, her voice tight with rage and desperation. When I finally got home, my phone was vibrating off the counter. 67 missed calls, 43 texts, 6 voicemails. The top message was from my mom, Adrian. What did you do? People are showing up and nothing is here. The venue is locked. There's no food. No one is answering. Call me. Below that, Emily texted, this isn't funny. Fix this. Then Jordan, my parents are livid. You better hope I don't see you today. I didn't respond to any of them. I just sat down on the edge of my bed, staring at the flurry of notifications like they were written in a different language. All that urgency, all that sudden concern. Where had that energy been when I was politely being told I wasn't welcome at my own sister's wedding? The first voicemail was my mom again, panicked. She sounded like she was pacing while leaving it. Adrian, I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is not okay. People flew in for this. Do you understand how bad this looks? We need you to call the venue. Now. The second was Emily, her voice trembling with barely contained fury. I cannot believe you would do this to me. After everything I've done for you? You're ruining the most important day of my life. This is disgusting, Adrian. I almost laughed. Everything she's done for me? My thumb hovered over the next voicemail but didn't press play. I had a feeling it would be the same guilt, outrage, attempts to twist the situation around like I was the villain for not quietly funding the entire fantasy and then vanishing like a good little ATM. But I wasn't angry anymore. That was the strange part. For the first time in years, I felt light, calm, like a weight had finally been set down after years of carrying it around on my back. This wasn't about money. Not really. It was about being treated like a human being, with boundaries, with feelings, with value beyond my bank account. I made myself a cup of coffee and took it out to the small balcony of my apartment. The sun was high, the air sharp and clear. I could hear distant traffic, the quiet bustle of a Saturday that, for most people, was just another day. For me, it felt like a reset. At noon, the calls started up again. The guest list must have reached the venue by then, and the full scope of the disaster had finally landed. A few people I hadn't spoken to in years messaged me, mostly cousins and extended family. Some asked what was going on. Others demanded explanations. One or two even accused me of ruining Emily's life. But then came a message from my Aunt Carla, my dad's sister, one of the few people who'd always treated me with kindness. Her message just said, I heard what happened. I'm so sorry they treated you that way. If you need anything, I'm here. That was the only one I answered. By late afternoon, things were unraveling publicly. Photos started surfacing online. Guests in suits and cocktail dresses standing outside a locked venue. Someone had snapped a shot of the closed for private event, sign still taped to the gate, untouched. Another had taken a video of Jordan arguing with what looked like a parking attendant. There was no food truck, no decorations, no music, just confusion and growing frustration. A friend from high school I hadn't spoken to in ages messaged me a link to a Facebook post from one of Jordan's relatives. It was a long, angry rant about entitled families, about how some people clearly can't handle hosting a real wedding, and how certain people had sabotaged a beautiful day because they couldn't stand not being the center of attention. I didn't even bother replying. Let them build whatever story they needed to feel righteous. But then, around 5:12 p.m., my phone rang again. This time, I answered. It was Mom. Adrian, she said, her voice thin and hoarse. We need to talk. There was no warmth in her tone. Just urgency, maybe even desperation. I stayed quiet. We're at the hotel now, she continued. Emily is hysterical. Jordan's parents are furious. This is a disaster. You can't just vanish and leave us like this. Why would you do something so cruel? I exhaled slowly, gripping the phone tighter than I needed to. You said I wasn't invited, I said calmly. I respected that. That's not what I meant, she snapped. You knew this wasn't personal. It was personal to me. There was a pause. A long one. I could hear muffled voices in the background, Maybe Emily shouting. Maybe someone crying. Then Mom said, "You didn't have to destroy everything." "I didn't destroy anything," I replied. "I just stopped paying for it." Another silence. Then, almost in a whisper, "Adrian, they think you did this to punish her." I let that hang in the air for a moment. "No," I said. This was me finally choosing myself. She started to respond, but I cut her off. "Mom, I didn't say anything when you left me out of everything. Not the tasting. Not the rehearsal dinner. Not even a seat at the wedding. I gave money. I gave time. I gave support. And in return, I got a text telling me I was an inconvenience to be removed. That wasn't me. You signed your name to it." She fell quiet again. "You don't get to decide when I matter and when I don't," I said. "You don't get to use me like a resource and then toss me out like clutter." "I'm your mother," she said softly. "And I'm your son," I replied. "Funny how that only seems to matter when I'm footing the bill." Her voice broke a little after that. "Adrian, what are we supposed to do now?" I didn't answer right away. I just stared out at the city skyline, watching the sun dip behind the buildings, the sky turning that deep gold that always made me feel both small and grounded. Finally, I said, "I don't know, Mom, but I won't be your safety net anymore." Then I hung up. I knew that was only the beginning, that there would be fallout, that Jordan's family would escalate, that Emily would scream, that Mom would spiral. I knew the story they'd tell about me, the villainous older brother who ruined the fairy tale. But for once, I didn't care. I had finally drawn a line, and the real reckoning hadn't even begun. The calls didn't stop. They slowed, sure, morphed from full-on panicked ring storms to quieter, more strategic attempts, but they didn't stop. Jordan's dad left me a voicemail the next day. Calm, cold. Something about legal ramifications and breach of verbal agreement. It was funny, in a bitter kind of way. I could practically hear the golf club in his hand as he dictated it, like I was some underperforming vendor, not a human being who'd personally bankrolled the fantasy his son married into. I didn't respond. I didn't flinch either. Let them sue me for canceling things I paid for, under my name, with my card. Let them explain to a lawyer how they uninvited the man who funded the entire operation, then assumed he'd still show up, silent, invisible, and obedient, like a check that signs itself. I spent the following week off social media, off family chats, off everything. I needed air. I needed distance. I stayed local, hit the gym in the mornings, read in cafes, walked longer routes home. No one recognized me, and I liked it that way. It felt clean. Like I was rinsing off years of built-up residue, shedding the identity they'd carved out for me. The bank. The background brother. The silent son. But silence has a shelf life, and on the 6th day after the wedding imploded, that silence shattered. It was evening. I had just sat down with a plate of takeout when my buzzer went off. I wasn't expecting anyone. The building has a camera at the front door, so I flicked on the screen, already half expecting a delivery person who got the wrong apartment. It was Emily. Hair up in a messy bun, makeup smudged, arms crossed tightly against her chest like she was holding herself together with sheer willpower. Her phone was clutched in one hand, screen still lit, as if she'd been rereading something over and over again. I didn't move. She rang again, then a third time. Then she looked up at the camera. "Adrian," she said, her voice barely audible through the speaker. "I know you're watching." I stayed frozen. I didn't know what I felt, not anger exactly, and not sympathy either. Just a slow, churning mix of confusion, detachment, and something sharp I couldn't quite name. "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "Please." After a moment, I pressed the button. The door clicked open. A few minutes later, she was standing in my hallway, arms still crossed, eyes darting around like she didn't quite recognize the space. I didn't offer her a seat. I didn't offer her water. I just leaned against the wall and waited. She didn't speak right away. Just looked at me. "You really did it," she finally said, almost in awe. I said nothing. "You actually canceled everything." "Yep. You didn't even tell us. You told me I wasn't welcome." Her mouth twitched. I couldn't tell if it was frustration or guilt. "That wasn't me. That was Mom. You didn't stop her." She opened her mouth, closed it again. "It wasn't like I could. You could have called me. You could have texted. You could have said, 'Adrian, I want you there.' But you didn't." She looked down. I thought you'd show up anyway." That stung more than I wanted to admit. Not because I had considered it, I hadn't, but because it confirmed something I'd long suspected. They didn't see me as a person with limits. Just a guarantee. The guy who shows up, pays up, shuts up. Did you ever even plan to pay me back? I asked, voice quieter now. She didn't answer right away. Then, no, simple. Honest. Awful. I exhaled slowly. Then what are you doing here? Emily. Her eyes flicked up to mine. I don't know. That. I believed. There was a long, heavy silence between us. I watched her face, saw the faint twitch in her jaw, the stress, the shame, the stubborn pride fighting not to break. She looked smaller somehow. Not physically, but in presence. The girl who used to command every room we walked into, who turned heads and wielded attention like a spotlight, now standing in front of me, dimmed. Not defeated, but real. Do you regret it? I asked. She flinched. What? The wedding? No. The text. Her lip quivered for just a second. I didn't write it, Adrian, but I let it be sent. That was the closest I was going to get to an apology. I nodded once. Okay. She finally stepped forward, like she was going to say something more, but then her phone buzzed. She glanced down at it, I scanning whatever message came through, then looked up again. Jordan's family thinks you're unstable, she said, almost casually. Let them. You're not going to defend yourself? No, her brow furrowed. Why not? I shrugged. Because I don't owe them anything. Not anymore. Not you. Not Mom. Not anyone who saw me as a wallet with legs. Emily stepped back, arms dropping slightly. So that's it? You're just done. I looked at her for a long moment. No. I'm just, finally even. She didn't respond. Just stood there in the middle of my apartment, looking around like she wanted to find something to hold on to. But there was nothing left for her here. Not guilt. Not comfort. Not even anger. Just the stillness of someone who'd stopped waiting for closure and decided to make their own. Finally, I said, you should go. She hesitated, then nodded. She turned and walked to the door. Just before she opened it, she paused and said, I don't know how we come back from this. I didn't say anything. She left, and for the first time in my life, I let her. After Emily left, the quiet in my apartment settled like dust. I stood there for a while, staring at the closed door, half expecting her to come back, to knock again, to say something, anything that would put a different ending on this mess. But she didn't. She walked away, and I finally understood that she wasn't the only one. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to be part of this family the way they wanted anymore. I wasn't going to be the silent supporter, the invisible backbone, the human wallet they called only when their world started tilting. I wasn't going to sit around waiting for a half-hearted apology that wouldn't come. I needed to end this properly. Not in anger, not in bitterness, just in truth. The next morning, I got up early, sat down with a mug of coffee, opened my laptop, and drafted a message, not for Emily, not for Mom, not even for Jordan's puffed-up family. It was for the whole extended family. Every cousin, every aunt, every uncle, even a few second cousins who only saw my name pop up at weddings and funerals. The subject line was simple, a few things you should know. And in the email, I laid it all out. I explained, without venom, exactly what had happened. How I'd funded most of the wedding, $22,000 in total between deposits, vendor fees, upgrades, because I was asked for help. How I was later uninvited by my own family in favor of optics. How I canceled the services that were under my name and legally my responsibility because I had been explicitly told I was not wanted. I made it clear there was no sabotage, no drunken tantrum, no petty revenge, just a simple, final withdrawal of support. I attached receipts, invoices, screenshots. Not to brag, not to humiliate, just to show the undeniable reality. I wasn't about to let Jordan's parents spin some sob story about a jealous brother, without the full truth standing right there for anyone willing to see it. I ended the email with this. I don't expect anyone to pick sides. I just want you to know mine, clearly, calmly, and without the years of rewriting and gaslighting that have too often followed situations like this. I wish Emily and Jordan well. I hope they find the happiness they deserve. I simply will not be a part of it anymore. Then I hit send, and I shut my laptop. I didn't wait for responses. I didn't care who gossiped, who fumed, who shrugged and went back to their brunch. I wasn't doing this for applause. I was doing it because for once, I needed to be on my side, not theirs. The fallout was immediate. By noon, my phone lit up again. Not with hate, surprisingly, but with messages from a few cousins I barely knew that well. Quiet, private messages. I had no idea, man. I'm sorry. If you ever want to grab a drink, let me know. I'm Team Adrian. We all kinda knew they treated you badly. None of us said anything. That's on us. I didn't respond to most of them. I appreciated it, truly, but this wasn't about validation. It wasn't about burning it all down for a cheering crowd. It was about walking away from a life where I was expected to swallow everything and pretend it tasted fine. Of course, Mom eventually responded too. A long, rambling email, full of justifications and half-hearted non-apologies. We didn't mean for it to escalate. We were under a lot of pressure from Jordan's family. You should have communicated better. Family is about forgiveness. She even tried the emotional card. You know your father would have been heartbroken to see us like this. I didn't even finish reading it. I archived it and blocked her number. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even hurt anymore. I just didn't have anything left to give her. The final blow came about a week later, though I didn't know it until my Aunt Carla called me, laughing so hard she could barely get the words out. Apparently, Jordan's family, so obsessed with status and appearances, hadn't taken kindly to the wedding fiasco being exposed publicly. Not because I had leaked anything, but because one of the guests, some distant cousin of Jordan's, had posted about it on Facebook. In graphic, humiliating detail, a local gossip blog picked it up, and then a regional news outlet. Wedding disaster, $100,000 celebration ends in empty venue and angry guests. Jordan's family was mortified, furious. Their carefully curated image took a hit. There were talks about legal options, but nothing ever came of it, because again, all the contracts were tied to me, and I had been legally in the clear. Jordan apparently started pulling away from Emily almost immediately afterward. Whispered accusations, tension, resentment. The cracks widened until, 6 months later, they filed for divorce. I didn't celebrate it. Divorce is ugly. It's painful, even when the people involved are selfish and shallow. But in the privacy of my own mind, I acknowledged a truth I couldn't ignore. They had built their marriage on sand, on lies, on entitlement. And when the tide finally came in, they were shocked to find no foundation underneath them. As for me, I moved on. I switched jobs, left the city I grew up in for one where nobody knew me as Emily's brother or the one who always helped. I built a new life. Smaller, quieter, but infinitely more mine. I stopped showing up just because I was expected to. I stopped answering calls that only came when someone needed something. I stopped making excuses for people who wouldn't do the same for me. And I started living. Really living. I traveled, took up photography, made friends who knew me not for what I could give, but for who I was. Sometimes, late at night, I'd think about them, my old family, and wonder if they ever truly understood why I left. If they sat around holiday tables with a conspicuous empty chair and whispered about how I'd changed, about how cold I'd become. Maybe they did, but more likely, they just replaced me with silence. Families like that are experts at rewriting history. Either way, it didn't matter. I wasn't their ghost to summon anymore. I was free. And this time, it wasn't because they allowed it. It was because I took it. And I never looked back. They say you never forget the moment you realize your family sees you as disposable. For me, that moment happened on Christmas Eve, surrounded by twinkling lights, sugar cookies, and the kind of cheer that usually masks the cracks in a family. My name's Greg, I'm 39, and until that night, I thought I understood the limits of how far my parents would go to play favorites. I didn't. I've got 2 kids, Emma, 11, and Lucas, 9. They're smart, kind, the type of kids who write thank you notes and still believe in magic. I'm not saying they're perfect, but they're good. My wife, Melissa, and I have done everything we could to give them a life filled with stability, love, and the kind of holiday traditions I didn't grow up with. I thought I'd left the toxicity behind, carved out something healthier. Turns out, the past has a way of finding its way back in. We live about 2 hours away from my parents. Every year, despite the strained relationship, we'd make the drive to attend the big family Christmas Eve party. My mom would insist we all wear red. Dad would pour spiked eggnog like it was holy water, and the living room would fill with my siblings, their spouses, and the grandkids. My older brother, Ryan, would always arrive late, grandiose, usually with his son Carter in tow and some excuse about a last-minute work thing that somehow required a fresh haircut and designer jacket. Ryan's always been the golden child. He could forget birthdays, skip out on family events, and he'd still be greeted like a war hero. I was the one who helped repaint my parents' kitchen last summer, the one who took off work to drive Mom to her surgery when Ryan was too busy. No one remembered that. But Ryan could post a photo of his latte art and Mom would comment, "So proud of my boy." It used to hurt. Now, I just let it pass. I'd found peace by lowering my expectations. This year, though? This year was different. We got there a little early. Emma helped arrange cookies on the tray while Lucas tried to sneak one when he thought no one was looking. Melissa poured cocoa for the kids and smiled her way through Mom's comments about how they're so well-behaved for now. I should have known something was off when I saw the pile of gifts under the tree. They were stacked high, shiny bows, glittery paper, big ones, small ones, tags all handwritten. But when I looked closer, I noticed something strange. None of them had Emma or Lucas's names. Maybe they were in the other room, I told myself. Maybe Mom was doing that thing where she hides the gifts for suspense. That's a thing she used to do, right? Then Ryan arrived, late as usual. Carter, now 13 and growing into a smirky teenager, swaggered in behind him like he owned the place. Ryan greeted the room like a politician, hugging Mom, fist-bumping Dad, ignoring me entirely. I watched Carter walk straight to the tree and say, "Whoa, that's all for us. All for the grandkids who made us proud this year," Dad said with a wink. I froze. The grandkids who made us proud. My stomach tightened, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Melissa squeezed my hand. She'd heard it too. Mom called everyone into the living room, practically bouncing with excitement. "We wanted to do something special this year," she beamed. "To honor the grandkids who've really shined, top of their class, helpful around the house, really making us proud." I glanced down at Emma and Lucas. Emma's smile faded. Lucas shifted uncomfortably. Ryan stood behind them like a proud stage dad, while Carter puffed up his chest. Mom handed out the first gift. To Carter, from Grandma and Grandpa. Carter tore it open, an iPad. I blinked. The next one was a pair of expensive sneakers. Then a gaming headset. Then a drone. Each gift was for Carter. Different tags, different wrapping, all addressed to him. Lucas leaned toward me. "Are ours coming later?" I couldn't answer. Then came the kicker. Carter held up the drone and laughed. "Guess you didn't deserve one," he said, looking straight at Emma and Lucas. My jaw clenched. I looked to Mom, to Dad, waiting for some kind of correction, some acknowledgement. But Mom just chuckled and said, "Oh, he's just teasing." Emma looked like she was trying not to cry. Lucas stared at the floor. Melissa's face was pale. Her mouth opened slightly, like she wanted to say something, but she didn't. And me? I didn't cause a scene. I didn't yell or flip the table, though every part of me burned with the urge to. Instead, I took a deep breath, stood up slowly, and said, "Come on, guys. We're heading home." Mom blinked. "Oh, don't be silly. Dinner's in an hour." "We're not hungry," I said, my voice calm but cold. "Come on, get your coats." Emma didn't say a word. Lucas followed quietly, drone noises still buzzing in the background. As we left, Ryan muttered, "Drama queen." And that was it. We drove home in silence. Lucas fell asleep in the back. Emma sat beside him, her head leaning against the window, tears glistening on her cheeks. Melissa stared out the front window, her hands in her lap, the tension humming between us. I didn't speak. I was too busy replaying the scene, each moment cutting deeper than the last. The gifts, the laugh, the way my parents smiled through it all, and the look in my daughter's eyes when she realized she didn't matter, not to them. That night, after tucking the kids in and watching Emma clutch the small stuffed bear she used to sleep with years ago, I picked up my phone. I stared at the message I was about to send. Not dramatic, not angry, just final. "Don't ever invite us again. We're not your punchline." I hit send, and the fallout began the next morning. The text came back as read. No response, no apology, nothing. I watched the screen for a few minutes, as if my parents might suddenly realize what they'd done and call. But the only notification I got that morning was from our local pharmacy, reminding me to pick up Emma's allergy meds. Melissa came into the kitchen holding 2 mugs of coffee. She handed me one wordlessly and sat across from me. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded slowly, but I wasn't. Something inside me had cracked open. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was angry. Quietly, deeply angry in a way I hadn't been in years. And beneath that anger was shame. Not for what I did, but for how long I tolerated it. See, that Christmas wasn't the first time my parents had made my kids feel invisible. It wasn't the first time they'd overlooked Melissa or talked about Ryan like he was the second coming of Steve Jobs. But it was the first time I saw the look on my daughter's face and realized that she understood. That she felt the difference now. That she'd started to believe it. Over the next few days, I tried to focus on our own holiday. We played board games, baked cookies, opened the gifts we'd bought each other, and lit the fireplace. But something had shifted in the atmosphere, like a window had been cracked open in a room we thought was sealed. We were trying to move on, but the cold still crept in. New Year's came and went quietly. Then, a week into January, my phone buzzed. It was a group chat my mom had created years ago, just called Family. It mostly stayed quiet, except for the occasional happy birthday or blurry photo of my dad's barbecue attempts. But this time, Mom, hi everyone. Just wanted to start planning Carter's big birthday weekend. He'll be 14 this year, can you believe it? We're thinking ski lodge getaway. Cabins are about $300 a night, but we can split. Who's in? I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen. Melissa was putting away groceries when she saw my face. What's wrong? I turned the screen toward her. She read it, blinked, then laughed. It was a bitter, sharp sound. They're unbelievable. I didn't reply in the group chat. I didn't say a word. But a few minutes later, Ryan responded. Ryan, sounds amazing, Mom. Count me and Carter in. Greg can probably cover our cabin too. He still owes me for the laptop I gave him in high school. That part wasn't even true. He'd given me an old broken Dell in senior year because he was getting a brand new MacBook, and even then, he made me borrow it like he was doing me a favor. Still, no one corrected him. Not Mom. Not Dad. Not my sister Katie, who chimed in right after. Katie, haha yes. Carter's birthday is basically a holiday. Let's make it big. I didn't respond. I left the group chat that afternoon. A few hours later, my mom called. I let it go to voicemail. Then she texted, Mom, can't believe you left the family chat. That's immature, Greg. I typed and deleted at least 4 responses before I settled on one word. Me, noted. Her reply was immediate. Mom, what's your problem lately? This is about the Christmas thing, isn't it? You always overreact. I didn't respond again. I was done explaining things to people who refused to listen. But I didn't realize how deep the favoritism went until a week later when Emma came home from school holding a folder of class assignments. She was excited, smiling, finally getting her energy back. Guess what? She said, holding out the folder. I got picked for the school STEM fair. I grinned. That's awesome, Em. What are you going to build? I want to do a solar-powered oven, she said. My teacher said it was a smart idea. Melissa and I hyped her up all evening. We ordered some materials online, printed out diagrams, even started drawing up presentation boards. That weekend, I posted a photo of her sketching ideas on the dining table. Just a quiet dad moment, nothing showy. The caption said, Proud of my little engineer. A day later, my sister Katie posted a picture of Carter holding a basketball. Katie's caption, My nephew equals next NBA MVP. Sorry not sorry. Then Mom commented under her post, Genius boy. We're so proud of you, Carter. Under mine? Silence. Melissa noticed it first. They didn't even like the post. I shrugged. It's fine. But it wasn't. Because 2 days later, Emma came to me looking confused. Grandma posted a picture of Carter on Facebook and said he was the smartest grandkid. I froze. When did she post that? This morning, Emma said quietly. He won something at school. A spelling thing. She wasn't crying, but her face had that hollow look I'd seen at Christmas. That quiet, defeated confusion kids have when something's too big to understand. I pulled her close. Hey, you're amazing, okay? And we're proud of you. Always. She nodded into my chest, but I could feel her body tense. The next day, I called my mom. She answered with that tone she always used when she thought I had something to apologize for. Well, look who finally decided to call. Did you really post that Carter is your smartest grandkid? I asked. My voice was calm, but I wasn't. Oh, come on, Greg. It's just a figure of speech. You're really taking things too personally these days. You know Emma saw that, right? She's a child. She'll get over it. That was the moment something inside me shifted. No, I said quietly. She shouldn't have to get over it. There was a pause. Greg, you're blowing this way out of proportion. You always have to be the victim. No, I've just stopped pretending it doesn't hurt. Another pause. Then she said something that I'd carry with me for the rest of the year. Well, maybe if you raised your kids to stand out more, they'd get the attention you want so badly. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just hung up. Melissa was in the doorway. She'd heard the whole thing. She walked over, sat beside me, and whispered, We're done with them, right? I nodded. But of course, it wasn't over. 2 weeks later, in February, I got a letter in the mail from my parents. Not a card, not an apology, a letter. It was written in my dad's handwriting, neat and cold. Greg, we're disappointed in how you've handled things lately. Cutting ties over perceived slights is childish. We hope you'll reconsider your attitude and remember that family means putting pride aside. At the bottom, my mom had scribbled, "Tell Emma and Lucas we love them, even if they don't always earn it." I didn't show the letter to the kids. I didn't want them to see that poison in writing. But I did show it to Melissa. She read it once, then again, then put it down and said nothing for a long time. That night, she said, "You know what the worst part is?" "What?" "They think they're the victims." I laughed bitterly. They always have. But even then, I thought we'd hit the bottom. I thought that letter was the worst it would get. I didn't know yet what Ryan had been up to behind the scenes. I didn't know what my parents were planning for Easter. I didn't know how far they were willing to go to pretend they'd done nothing wrong, and how deep they'd dig that hole before trying to drag me down into it. Because the betrayal that broke everything, it hadn't happened yet, but it was coming. And when it did, there'd be no going back. The fallout from that letter hung over our house like thick fog. For weeks, everything I did, every dish I washed, every meeting I sat through at work, every bedtime story I read, had a faint background noise of that line Mom had scribbled at the bottom of the page. Even if they don't always earn it. Emma hadn't seen it, but she felt it. I could see it in the way she hesitated before showing us her schoolwork now. The way Lucas looked at her before asking for help with homework, like he was worried his big sister might snap. She never did. But the lightness in her step was dimmer, like someone had taken her pride and slipped it under a microscope, examining it with disapproval. And me? I was drowning in shame and frustration. Not because I felt I was wrong, but because I had let it get this far. Because I had let my kids love people who couldn't love them back the way they deserved. By the middle of February, Melissa and I sat down one night after the kids were in bed, the TV humming quietly with some cooking competition neither of us were watching. She reached over and muted it. "I know you're spiraling," she said gently, "but you've got to pull yourself out of this. You did the right thing walking away." I nodded, slowly. I feel like I let them steal something from me. From the kids. They didn't steal it. They tried. But you stopped it in time. You protected them. It didn't feel like it. But that conversation sparked something. Not a burst of motivation, not some grand phoenix rising from the ashes moment. Just a tiny click in my brain. A quiet decision to stop waiting for my family to validate me. If they weren't going to be the village behind my kids, then I'd build one myself. From scratch. So I started small. I volunteered to chaperone Emma's STEM club one Friday after school. It was awkward at first. I was the only dad there, surrounded by enthusiastic moms and a slightly frazzled science teacher who looked grateful just to have another adult around. Emma beamed when she saw me in the hallway. "You came," she whispered, half embarrassed, half thrilled. I stayed in the corner mostly, helping kids tape down poster boards or test circuits that kept shorting out. But I saw the way Emma stood a little taller that day. The way she raised her hand more. How she explained her solar oven idea to two of the younger kids who were struggling with theirs. When we got in the car afterward, she said, "It was cool that you were there." It hit me harder than I expected. Later that week, Lucas came home talking about a soccer skills workshop he wanted to join. It was early Saturday mornings, which usually meant cartoons and pancakes, but I signed us both up. I hadn't kicked a soccer ball in years, but Lucas didn't care. He just wanted to do something with me. And slowly, life started to shift. I joined a local dads group, not the kind that meets to drink beer and complain, but one focused on community volunteering and mutual support. We built toy kits for kids in hospitals, ran cleanup drives at local parks, even hosted a Dad and Me event at the library where I watched Lucas read the BFG out loud to 3 other kids like a tiny motivational speaker. Meanwhile, I started leaning harder into work. I was a mid-level project manager at a logistics software firm, and while I'd always been good at it, I never pushed for more. I'd spent too many years trying to keep my head down, chasing approval from the wrong places. Now, with nothing to lose, I stepped up. I volunteered to lead a tricky cross-department initiative that had been stalled for months. I stayed late, learned the parts of the system I'd always avoided, took ownership when things broke. My boss took notice. At the next all-hands meeting, he called me out by name. "Greg's been quietly keeping this whole operation afloat," he said. "If you've benefited from faster rollouts this quarter, thank him." The Slack messages started rolling in. Not just praise, but opportunities. Someone in another department looped me in on a product pilot. Another offered to recommend me for a leadership fellowship. I wasn't used to it, but I didn't push it away. At home, Melissa was thriving too. She'd picked up some freelance consulting work, using her marketing background to help local businesses with branding and outreach. She'd started doing Zoom calls in the guest bedroom, her voice full of clarity and confidence. "You're different lately," she told me one evening. "It's like you're finally letting go of the weight." And I was. Slowly. Because here's the thing I didn't expect about cutting off my parents and siblings. It hurt. Of course it did. But it also made space. Space to breathe, to think, to build. But that doesn't mean the past stayed quiet. In early March, Katie, my sister, sent me an Instagram message. Not a call, not even a text. Just a DM with a screenshot of a photo Melissa had posted of Emma's finished solar oven project. Emma was standing next to it, grinning, sunlight bouncing off the aluminum panels. The caption said, "My little innovator. First place in the district showcase." Katie's message underneath the screenshot read, "So, we're just pretending none of this drama happened now." I didn't reply. 10 minutes later, another message. "Carter wanted to congratulate Emma. He's matured, you know." I still didn't respond. Because I knew what this was. Not a truce. A test. An invitation to come crawling back so they could pretend it had all been a misunderstanding. I deleted the message. A week later, Ryan called me. I almost didn't pick up, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hey bro," he said, like nothing had happened. "Long time." I waited. "So listen, Mom and Dad are planning a family Easter brunch," he said. "They were wondering if you guys might want to come by. Clear the air, you know? Start fresh." "Did they tell you to call me?" No, he lied. I thought it was time. What exactly would I be clearing the air about?" He paused. "I mean, come on, man. You got real sensitive over some gift mix-up. Carter's a kid, he jokes around. And Mom and Dad, look, they love your kids, you know that. They just show it different." I let the silence hang. Then I said, "Do you even remember what Mom wrote in that letter?" He laughed. "Letters? Who reads letters anymore?" I hung up, but the call rattled me. Because it wasn't just about me. Easter was coming, and Emma and Lucas had asked if we'd be doing anything with the big family this year. They didn't miss the drama, but they missed the idea of belonging. And I wanted to give them that. Not through forced holidays or fake apologies, but by creating something better. So that week, Melissa and I decided to host our own Easter brunch. We invited 3 of Emma's STEM friends and their families. Lucas brought 2 soccer buddies. Melissa reached out to a co-worker who was new in town with twin girls. We bought folding tables, string lights, painted eggs, baked way too much food. I even borrowed a bunny costume from the community center and walked around the backyard like an idiot for 2 hours handing out treats. And you know what? It was the best holiday we'd had in years. There was laughter, warmth, no forced smiles or passive-aggressive comments. Just real joy. At one point, Emma ran up to me, face flushed, and said, "Dad, this is the best Easter ever." And that's when I knew we hadn't just left something behind. We were building something new. Of course, the past wasn't done with us yet. Because 2 days after that brunch, I got a certified letter in the mail from a law office. And when I opened it, the headline made my blood run cold. It was a notice of revocation of financial agreement. And at the bottom, in my father's signature, were 5 words that would spark the final war. Reconsider your attitude. Or else. At first, I didn't fully understand what I was looking at. I sat at the kitchen table, certified letter in one hand, coffee going cold in the other. Melissa stood behind me, reading over my shoulder in silence. The letterhead was from a mid-sized legal firm 2 towns over, one I vaguely recognized from a billboard along the freeway. Termination of informal family agreement, effective immediately. The language was stiff, cold, almost laughable in its attempt to sound professional. It laid out, in far too many words, that any and all future support agreements, informal or otherwise, between myself and my parents were now considered null and void. According to the letter, Gregory M. has made repeated decisions that violate the expectations of mutual respect and contribution. It closed with, "Should you choose to re-engage in a productive and respectful manner, financial considerations may be renegotiated in good faith." Melissa blinked. What financial agreement? That was the question, wasn't it? There had never been a signed document. No handshake deal. No verbal contract. But years ago, when we were still barely making ends meet, I'd helped my parents out of a jam. A big one. Back in 2016, my dad's construction supply company had fallen behind on taxes. Something about a misfiled return and penalties that ballooned fast. He was facing over $40,000 in back taxes and late fees. He called me in a panic. At the time, Melissa and I had just sold our first little house in the suburbs and moved closer to the city. We'd made a modest profit, stashed most of it into savings. But when Dad called, frantic and embarrassed, I didn't hesitate. I wrote a check for $18,000 to cover the first IRS deadline, then co-signed a short-term loan in his name to help them restructure the rest. I never asked for it back. He promised, of course, "I'll make it right, son," but I wasn't expecting anything. That's just what you did for family, I thought back then. That's what I did. And over time, they began to treat that gesture as something they had done for me. I'd hear it in little comments. "Well, if we hadn't helped you get into that neighborhood," or "You forget we've always supported you when we could." They rewrote the story, and I let them. Until now. Because now, they were weaponizing it. Now they were claiming there had been a financial agreement in place that I had violated with my attitude. Melissa read the letter again, then set it down carefully like it might explode. "They're preparing for something," she said. "Something bigger." I nodded. My heart was pounding, but my brain was clear. For the first time in this entire nightmare, I saw it all for what it really was. This wasn't about hurt feelings anymore. This was calculated. Ryan had probably helped write it, or at least pushed for it. He always saw himself as the business-minded one in the family, despite coasting on Dad's money for most of his adult life. If they were formalizing things now, putting words on paper, setting up legal positioning, it meant they weren't just cutting me off. They were planning to erase me entirely. That night, I went into our storage room and dug out a box I hadn't touched in years. Old bank statements, email printouts, and a manila folder labeled Dad IRS Loan 2016. I had kept it out of habit, not paranoia. But now, flipping through the paperwork, I felt something spark. There it was, the signed promissory note from the credit union. My name, co-signed. The payment history, a wire transfer receipt. And most importantly, an email from my dad with the subject line. Need help, just until we rebuild. In the body, he wrote, "Greg, I don't know what I'd do without you. I'll make this right. Once we finish the new contract in July, we'll square up. I promise." I stared at that line for a long time, because in their world, that promise had disappeared. But now I had a paper trail. Over the next week, I made quiet moves. First, I reached out to a lawyer, Jillian, someone I'd worked with years ago during a dispute over a contractor. She wasn't flashy, but she was sharp and methodical. I sent her scanned copies of the letter, the email, the loan documents. She called me the next morning. "This isn't a financial termination," she said. "It's a setup." "What do you mean?" "They're trying to preempt any legal claims you might make. By framing this as you violating their expectations, they're hoping to make any countersuit look like petty retaliation." "Do I have a case?" "You have a very strong case," she said. "Especially if they ever took funds or services without documented repayment. And if this goes to court, that email alone could wreck them." I felt a calm spread through me. Not joy, not revenge, just clarity. For years, I'd lived under the illusion that family drama was supposed to stay inside the house, that raising your voice or pushing back made you the problem. But now I saw it for what it really was. They'd used guilt like currency, love like a loan with interest, and my silence as permission. And they were about to find out I wasn't quiet anymore. Melissa and I started planning. Not in a vengeful way, but with purpose. We talked about how to protect the kids, our assets, our time. We moved some savings into a new account. Transferred the house deed into both of our names equally. Previously, it had been just mine, for loan purposes. We also sat down with Emma and Lucas. We didn't share everything, just the truth in a way they could understand. "Grandma and Grandpa are upset with Dad," I said, "and they've decided not to talk to us right now." Emma frowned. "Because we didn't come to Easter?" "No, sweetie," Melissa said. "Because we stopped letting them treat us unfairly." Lucas asked, "Are we still allowed to miss them?" That one hit hard. I nodded. "Of course. But just because someone's family doesn't mean they're always safe to be around. And it's okay to feel sad about that." The kids took it better than we expected. Honestly, better than I had at their age. And part of me felt pride that we were breaking the cycle now, before it hardened into something they carried into their own families someday. Meanwhile, I began documenting everything. I downloaded old texts, screenshotted Facebook comments, saved voicemails from my dad, little offhand remarks like, "Glad you're the reliable son," or, "I knew I could count on you to clean up Ryan's mess." I pulled old emails from 2019 when I'd helped them refinance their car loan, another financial favor they'd conveniently forgotten. Jillian helped me draft a cease and desist notice to the law firm. Nothing aggressive, just a formal record that I disputed their claims and expected all future communication to be directed through legal channels. The letter was delivered by courier. And that's when things shifted again. Because 2 days after they received it, Melissa's sister, Janine, called her out of the blue. Apparently, my parents had started talking, quietly, behind the scenes, to extended family, to neighbors, to friends. And they weren't just rewriting history. They were painting me as unstable. "He's unraveling," Mom had said, apparently. Ever since we stopped enabling him, he's been lashing out. "She always coddled him," Dad said on another call. "Now he's acting like we owe him the world." Melissa got texts from 2 mutual friends, people we used to see at church, asking if we were okay. "They're starting the smear campaign," she said. But what they didn't realize was, they weren't dealing with the same son they used to guilt and to silence. They were dealing with a father, a husband, a man who finally saw through the game and had the receipts to prove it. And then the opportunity came. Not from them, from Ryan. Because arrogance has a funny way of opening doors when you least expect it. It was April. I was scrolling LinkedIn during a work break when I saw it. Ryan had tagged himself in a post from a mid-size investment group. "Proud to announce our latest partner collaboration with McTavish Build Group. Excited to spearhead the expansion into the residential solar market." McTavish Build Group. That name stopped me cold. Because McTavish was the company my dad had always wanted a contract with back in 2016. He'd bid on one of their projects and lost, said it nearly tanked his cash flow for the year. And now, here was Ryan, announcing a partnership under his name, tied to solar builds. Emma's science project flashed in my head. I clicked through. The partnership was brand new. The ink wasn't even dry. And then I saw it. One of the promotional graphics on McTavish's site, a rendering of a smart solar cabin concept with the pitch, "Powered by design inspired by real-world STEM innovators." At the bottom, a diagram, a nearly identical version of Emma's solar oven project. Not hers, obviously. Tweaked, polished, professionally drawn. But the mechanism, the angle of the reflectors, the heat absorption material, they matched her notes. Exactly. I sat there in stunned silence. Then I started connecting the dots. Weeks earlier, Melissa had posted Emma's project photos publicly. We hadn't thought anything of it. But someone had seen it. And someone had used it. Ryan had stolen my daughter's work, branded it as his own, tied it to a business deal. And worse, he was now about to profit from it. That was the moment the plan crystallized. Not just to push back, not just to protect, but to take back everything and make sure none of them saw it coming. By the time I reached out to Jillian again, my heart wasn't pounding anymore. It wasn't rage. It wasn't panic. It was focus. I sat across from her in her office, neat, quiet, sun streaming in through half-closed blinds, and laid out the McTavish partnership post, the solar oven diagram, the screenshots of Emma's original sketches, photos, and Melissa's social media timeline. Jillian didn't even blink. "This is theft," she said plainly. "And if it's used in a business context, it's corporate theft. IP infringement. Possibly fraud." I nodded. "I don't want to sue them for millions. I just want it public. I want it undeniable." She leaned back. "Then we'll start with a cease and desist to McTavish. Get them on record as distributing stolen content. If they're smart, they'll panic and pull out." "And Ryan?" She smiled, thin and sharp. "Oh, he's going to learn what it feels like to be publicly embarrassed. Thoroughly." Over the next 2 weeks, things moved fast. Jillian drafted a beautifully brutal letter, one that outlined, in meticulous detail, the original creation date of Emma's project, the timestamped posts, the competition win, and the nearly identical rendering used in the McTavish promotional pitch. We didn't send it through email. We sent it as a formal legal package, couriered directly to McTavish's legal department and the CEO. Within 4 days, I got a call from a man named Stephen Day, Director of Operations at McTavish. "Mr. M, I'm calling to apologize." Profusely, he said, voice tight with panic. "We were unaware the design came from a minor school project. Had we known, you didn't ask where the design came from? We trusted our partner's submission. Mr. Ryan M. represented it as his own prototype." My throat tightened. He claimed to have invented it? "Yes, sir. I'd like to assure you that as of this morning, we've frozen all rollout plans tied to that partnership, and we are internally reviewing all content and contracts connected to it." "Good," I said, "because if this goes to court, I'm bringing Emma with me. I'll let the press photograph her standing next to the model she built on our kitchen table with tinfoil and a shoebox." He exhaled hard. "There's no need for that. Please, Mr. M. Let us fix this." They didn't just retract the partnership. They published a formal apology. It went live the next day on their website and social channels. "We deeply regret the use of intellectual material that was not properly sourced. We have since discovered that a design submitted by a recent collaborator was in fact created by a young innovator, Emma M., as part of a school STEM fair. We commend her brilliance and have made a charitable donation to support her school's science program in her honor." They donated $25,000 to Emma's school. That morning, I showed her the post. She read it 3 times, then whispered, "They said my name." Lucas shouted, "You're famous now," from the hallway. Melissa cried, "I didn't. I was too focused on what was still to come." Because while McTavish had done the right thing, Ryan? He doubled down. He posted a passive-aggressive tweet. "Jealousy is a disease. Real creators rise above the noise." Then he started spreading his version to the family. That we had manipulated a child's school project to tank his career. That we were bitter. That we were turning the kids into pawns. But what Ryan hadn't realized was that McTavish's internal investigation wasn't just about PR. It was legal. And 2 weeks later, he got hit with a formal letter from their lawyers demanding full disclosure of all his past submitted work, verification of originality, and immediate termination of the collaboration. His name was scrubbed from their site. The LinkedIn post disappeared. I heard through a mutual contact, one of Ryan's old college friends, that 3 other companies quietly paused deals with him after hearing what happened. No one wanted to be tied to a guy who stole from a 12-year-old and got exposed by a publicly traded partner. But the revenge didn't stop there. Melissa had a brilliant idea. She contacted Emma's school principal and pitched a story. A local girl's science project gets stolen, a corporate partner uses it for profit, and the company donates money to make it right. The principal went wide-eyed. "Would you be open to a media piece?" Melissa smiled. "We'd be thrilled." By the following week, a local news station was filming Emma in her classroom, standing next to her solar oven. She spoke shyly but clearly, explaining how she came up with the idea, how she tested it in the backyard, how it felt weird at first when someone else tried to claim it. The anchor ended the segment with a reminder that sometimes the brightest minds in innovation aren't in boardrooms. They're in our own classrooms. The clip went viral in our town. The school got flooded with congratulations. The PTA called it the best press they'd had in years. But the best part? My mom called. She didn't even try to deny what had happened. She just said, "You didn't have to humiliate the family." I laughed. "Oh, we're just getting started." I wasn't bluffing. Remember that promissory note from 2016? Jillian filed a claim in small claims court. It wasn't about the money. It was about the record. Dad ignored the notice. So we escalated. The hearing happened in May. He didn't show. Jillian and I presented the documents, the emails, the payment receipts. It was quiet, methodical, boring, and ironclad. We won. Judgment entered. $18,742.31 plus court fees and interest. I sent a copy to my parents with a note. "Since financial agreements matter so much to you." It arrived the day after Ryan's story got picked up in a national STEM education roundup. One sentence buried halfway through read, "The company retracted its partnership after learning the submitted prototype had been developed by a local middle school student in a documented competition." Ryan didn't show up to Memorial Day weekend at Katie's. Neither did our parents. We didn't care. Because we weren't just surviving anymore, we were thriving. Emma got a STEM scholarship to attend a summer program at the local university. Lucas made goalie for his rec league. Melissa's consulting work exploded. 3 local business owners had seen the news story and reached out. And me? I got promoted. My company offered me a leadership position in a new satellite office. More pay, more control, and best of all, a culture I could shape. At the first all-hands meeting, I ended the presentation with a slide that read, "Give credit. Always. Even when no one's watching." People applauded. Some didn't get it. But I did. So did Melissa. And so did Emma, who watched from the back of the room with a quiet smile. We never spoke to my parents again. Not after the court ruling. Not after the school donation. Not after the news segment that aired during dinner hour and left them scrambling to control the narrative in a town that had already made up its mind. Because in the end, they weren't just cut off. They were forgotten. And that, more than anything else, was the thing they couldn't stand. It wasn't the letter. It wasn't the lawsuit. It wasn't the donations, or the headlines, or the judgment. It was the silence. The way we stopped defending ourselves. The way we stopped showing up to absorb the damage. The way we just moved on. Without them. And as for Ryan, well, last I heard, he was taking time off to rebrand. But Emma? She's building a solar-powered compost bin for the school garden. And this time, she's filing for a patent. With my lawyer. Because some names? You don't get to erase. Some sparks? You can't steal. And some families? They don't break. They rebuild. Stronger. Louder. Brighter. Without the ones who always wanted to dim the light. If you've ever had that weird, gut-twisting moment when everyone at the table knows something you don't, and you're the punchline of the joke, you'll understand exactly what I felt that night. But I'll get to that. First, let me introduce myself. I'm Kyle, 27, currently working in IT for a small but decent firm, and I've always been the kind of guy who tries to stay out of family drama. You know the type, polite at gatherings, brings a bottle of wine, offers to help clean up, never causes waves. The invisible glue guy. At least, that's how I used to think of myself. That changed last Christmas. My family's not big, but we're tight-knit. Or we were. Mom, Dad, my younger sister Emma, 24, and me. Then there's my mom's side, Aunt Susan, Uncle Rob, and their 2 kids, Jake and Liz. Every Christmas, we all cram into Aunt Susan's house, which smells permanently of cinnamon sticks and some Yankee candle scent called Cozy Fireplace, or something equally over the top. It's kitschy, but it's been a tradition since I was a kid. To everyone on the outside, we look like a normal, happy family. Lots of laughter, matching pajamas, group photos by the tree. But if you looked a little closer, especially over the last couple of years, you'd notice the cracks. The way my dad always seemed to interrupt me when I brought up anything remotely personal. New project at work, new apartment, even when I got promoted last spring. He'd steer the conversation away like it was uncomfortable. Or the way my mom would suddenly remember something urgent in the kitchen whenever I tried to ask about family stuff, finances, plans, anything that might go beyond surface-level small talk. It got worse after college. I paid my own way through school. Scholarships, part-time jobs, the whole grind. Meanwhile, my sister Emma took a different route. She stayed home for community college, dropped out after 2 semesters, and started trying to figure things out, which meant hopping between retail jobs and traveling with friends. I never judged her. Not out loud, anyway. I just figured we all have our own pace. What bothered me, though, was how my parents treated us so differently. Emma had a brand new iPhone every other year. I had to buy mine. She got a used Toyota Corolla when she turned 20. I was still catching buses to work after graduation until I finally saved enough for a dented Honda Civic with 180,000 miles. But I chalked it up to she's the baby, or they're just helping her find her way. It stung sometimes, but I told myself it didn't matter. I was independent. I didn't need their help. Still, some part of me couldn't help noticing that the scoreboard felt a little lopsided. So Christmas last year, I guess that's where everything really began to unravel. It started off normal enough. I showed up with a small gift for everyone, dressed in my usual "Don't Judge Me It's Christmas" sweater, and hugged my way through the front door. Aunt Susan was already 2 glasses deep into her holiday sangria, laughing at something Jake had said. Emma was sitting on the floor next to the tree, unwrapping her gifts early, of course. She always got special treatment. She just can't wait. While the rest of us followed the schedule like disciplined elves. Dinner was the usual chaos. Too many side dishes, not enough gravy. Someone forgot the rolls. It was me, always me. We all sat at the long table that Aunt Susan extended with one of those shaky folding tables that wobbled every time someone cut into their ham. I sat between Uncle Rob and Liz, who was too busy scrolling TikTok to engage. Conversation bounced around. Work, politics, the usual family gossip. Then came the moment. Aunt Susan raised her glass during dessert and said, "In that way, only wine-loosened relatives can. Well, I hope you liked the car we all pitched in for." She was smiling at me. At first, I laughed. I genuinely thought it was a joke. I assumed she was teasing me for still driving the ancient Civic. So I grinned and replied, "Yeah, right, nice one." But then, the table went quiet. Like sitcom-level quiet. Forks stopped midair. Even Emma looked up from her phone. And suddenly I noticed everyone was looking at me. My parents. My sister. Aunt Susan. Uncle Rob. The cousins. All of them. That's when I said it. What car? The confusion on Uncle Rob's face was immediate. He turned to my dad and said, "Wait, you guys didn't give it to him?" My dad laughed, kind of forced, and mumbled something like, "Oh, well, let's not get into that now." But I was already scanning faces. Something was wrong. My mom was suddenly busy folding her napkin into microscopic triangles. Emma leaned in toward me and whispered, "Wait, they never gave it to you." And that was it. That was the moment something cracked. The moment I knew there was something I wasn't supposed to know. Something big. My stomach sank. I didn't say anything at first. I just looked around the table and tried to piece it together from the looks. Aunt Susan looked genuinely confused. Uncle Rob looked uncomfortable. My parents looked caught. That's the only way to describe it. Like two people who thought they got away with something, but suddenly realized they were standing under a spotlight. I tried to keep my voice steady as I asked, "What do you mean? Gave what to me?" Emma looked like she regretted saying anything, but it was too late. The thread had been pulled. I could feel the tension thickening in the room, like the air itself was warning me not to ask too many questions. But I wasn't backing off. Not this time. Not after years of brushing off little slights and unequal treatment. Aunt Susan set her glass down slowly. "Rob and I gave your parents some money this summer. We wanted to help out. You mentioned your car was breaking down, so we figured," she trailed off. Uncle Rob picked it up. "Yeah, we all chipped in. Even Jake and Liz added something. Your dad said he'd take care of the paperwork and surprise you on your birthday." My birthday was in August. It was now December, and there had been no car. No surprise. No mention. I didn't get angry. Not visibly. I just sat there, nodding slowly, heart pounding. I turned to my dad. "So, where is it?" He didn't answer right away. My mom cleared her throat and said, "Kyle, we didn't want to overwhelm you. You'd just moved apartments, and we thought maybe a new car would complicate your finances." I stared at her. "You thought a working car would complicate things?" My voice was quiet, but I could feel the heat rising. My uncle was frowning now. "Wait, you didn't even tell him?" My dad shifted in his chair. "We were going to. We were just waiting for the right time." Emma, bless her, said what I was thinking. "That's such garbage. You guys took the money and never told him." She sounded genuinely appalled. And that's when I saw the flicker in my mom's eyes. Defensive. Cornered. She said, "We didn't take it. We used it where it was needed." I turned to her. "Where was it needed, Mom?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. My dad glanced at her, then back at me. He tried to smile, to downplay. "Kyle, we'll talk about this later." But I was done waiting for later. My pulse was racing. My hands were shaking under the table. And I had a feeling, an awful, burning suspicion, that the answer to that question was going to hurt. Bad. And then Aunt Susan asked it out loud. "Wait, what did you use it for?" Silence. And then Emma's voice, small but sharp. "Oh my God. You gave it to her, didn't you?" And that was when the whole damn thing began to unravel. I didn't answer right away. Honestly, I don't think I even processed what Emma had said until a full 10 seconds later. You know how your brain can kind of buffer information when it's too much at once? That's what it felt like. Everyone at the table was still, absolutely still, like a freeze frame in a movie. Even Liz had put her phone down. That's how you know something serious is happening. Emma leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, jaw tight. She wasn't looking at me. She was staring directly at our parents. My mom gave a little scoff, that performative, offended kind of noise she does when someone has the audacity to call her out. "That's a very serious accusation, Emma," she said, eyes flicking toward me, probably hoping I'd defuse the tension. I didn't. Emma didn't back off either. You used the money for the car, didn't you? Just not for Kyle. You gave it to me. Her voice cracked a little at the end. Didn't you? My dad looked down at his plate. Mom pressed her fingers to her temples like she had a migraine. That's not fair, she muttered. That's not what happened. Aunt Susan wasn't having it. Then what did happen? She asked. Because it sure sounds like you took a gift meant for Kyle and, what, repurposed it. Silence. Again. Until my dad finally sighed and said, we were just trying to be practical. Emma had no car, no job, no direction. She needed it more. I blinked. I also didn't have a car, Dad. He shook his head. You had that Civic, which was literally breaking down every month. Remember when the brakes went out on the freeway? I told you about that. You laughed and said, that's part of the car experience. My voice was rising now. I wasn't yelling, not yet, but it was sharp. I felt like my chest was going to explode. The realization was sinking in, slow and awful. The money that had been pitched in for me, by extended family, by people who cared, was funneled into yet another one of Emma's impulsive life decisions. And I hadn't been told. I hadn't even been considered. It wasn't like we just handed her a car, Mom said quickly, like she was trying to steer the narrative before it spiraled out of control. She needed to get back on her feet. She had interviews. She was trying. She quit that job 2 weeks after she got it. I snapped. Emma flinched. And you didn't just hand her a car. You bought her a 2019 Mazda. I saw it on Instagram. Leather seats. Sunroof. Emma posted a video of her manifesting abundance while driving to Starbucks. I didn't know that money came from them, Emma said quietly, not meeting anyone's eyes. They told me they were helping out. They didn't say anything about it being meant for you. Because if she knew, I said bitterly, even she would have said no. Emma opened her mouth to say something, then shut it. That stung in its own way. Because the truth is, if our roles were reversed, if I had been given something meant for her, I would have said no. I would have insisted it go to her. I had done that kind of thing before. More than once. I trusted you, I said, looking directly at my dad. You could have told me. You could have asked me. But instead, you just what? Took a gift and rerouted it like a bank transfer. My dad had the nerve to look annoyed. We didn't think you'd need it. You always figure things out. Oh. I laughed, hollow and sharp. So this is my punishment for being responsible. My mom cut in, voice rising with that classic defensive edge. It's not a punishment. You don't understand the pressure we've been under. Emma was lost. We had to do something. She's been struggling. We've all been struggling, I shot back. But only one of us got a brand new car because of it. The table was deathly quiet again. Uncle Rob looked like he was physically holding back from saying something he'd regret. Aunt Susan wasn't even trying. Her expression was pure, unfiltered disgust. I'm sorry, she said slowly, but that's not okay. That's not how gifts work. That money was for Kyle. My mom waved a hand. We'll pay it back. I laughed again, harder this time. No, you won't. You haven't even acknowledged what you did, let alone apologized. You're just trying to sweep it under the rug because it got exposed. Enough, Dad said. Let's not ruin Christmas. And that was the moment. That was the exact moment I broke. Ruin Christmas? I said, standing up so suddenly the chair scraped loudly against the floor. No, Dad. You already ruined Christmas. You just thought you'd get away with it. And guess what? You almost did. My hands were trembling. I wasn't crying. I never cry in front of them. But I could feel my throat tighten. All the years of quiet disrespect, of being treated like the backup child, of being expected to carry my own weight while Emma got bailed out time and time again. It was all bubbling to the surface. You've always done this, I said, my voice shaking. Always. I got good grades. No one cared. I paid my way through college. No one even said congratulations. I get promoted? Crickets. But Emma takes a painting class and you act like she cured cancer. That's not true, Mom said weakly. It is true, Emma whispered. Kyle's right. Heads turned. My mom looked like someone had slapped her. Emma. I didn't know. Emma repeated louder now. I didn't know they gave you money for him. And now that I do, I don't want the car. You're being dramatic, Dad said. No, Emma said, standing up too. You're the ones who made this a mess. Not him. There it was. The turning point. The crack that widened. I wasn't sure whether to be grateful for Emma's support or even angrier at how long it took her to realize the truth. I felt like I'd been gaslit my entire life into thinking I was the selfish one, the difficult one, when really, I'd just been asking for basic fairness. I'm going home, I said finally. I've had enough. Kyle, my mom started, but I held up a hand. Don't. Please. Just don't. Aunt Susan stood too. You're not the one who should be leaving, she said, glaring at my parents. You should be ashamed. Uncle Rob was already pulling on his coat. Jake and Liz followed without a word. Emma stood frozen, torn between guilt and defiance. I didn't wait to see how the rest of it unfolded. I just walked out the door, got into my rust bucket Civic, and drove off into the freezing night. It wasn't until I hit the main road that the tears finally came. Not because of the car, not even because of the money, but because it finally clicked that this wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a pattern, a choice. One they'd made over and over again, no matter how hard I worked or how much I gave. And this time, it was one betrayal too many. I got home, parked under the flickering streetlight outside my apartment, and just sat there for a while in the cold, thinking, replaying every moment of that dinner, every moment of every year that came before it. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. And that was when I started planning. The days after Christmas felt like I was floating underwater. Everything moved slower, sounded muffled, and felt heavier. I went back to work the next morning, because what else was I going to do? Sit in my apartment and stew in silence? My company's office was half empty anyway, with most people taking vacation. I liked that. It gave me time to breathe. No calls from my parents. Not even a text. Not a sorry or a let's talk. I guess I shouldn't have expected anything, but some stupid part of me still hoped they'd reach out, that they'd realize how deeply they hurt me. But they didn't. Not that day. Not the next. Not that week. Emma texted me on the 28th. Emma, hey, you okay? Me, not really. Emma, I didn't know. I swear. Me, I know. Emma, I'm giving the car back. I stared at that message for a long time. I wanted to say thank you. I wanted to say she didn't have to do that. But I didn't trust myself to say the right thing, so I just sent a thumbs up emoji and left it there. I didn't want to be bitter toward her, even if a part of me still was. But mostly, I was just tired. Something shifted in me after that dinner. It wasn't like a lightning bolt moment where I suddenly became a new man. It was quieter, more like a slow unfreezing. A realization that I had spent so much of my life begging for acknowledgement, validation, scraps of attention that would never come unless they served someone else's narrative. And now I was done. I didn't rage. I didn't scream. I didn't post a long, cryptic Facebook status. I just started over. Quietly. The first thing I did was clean my apartment from top to bottom. Not out of boredom or some sudden Marie Kondo inspiration. It was more symbolic than that. I threw out anything that reminded me of home. Childhood photos, old birthday cards with generic love, mom and dad scrawled at the bottom. Even the quilt my mom made me in college. It was harsh. I knew that. But I needed space. Literal and emotional. Then I sat down and took stock of my life. I was 27. I had a steady job, modest but reliable. I wasn't rich, but I wasn't struggling. I had no debt. My car, ancient as it was, still ran, barely. But it got me from point A to B. I had a few friends, a decent gym nearby, and a notebook full of ideas I kept promising myself I'd explore when life calms down. Well, life was calm now. Not in a peaceful way, more like the silence after a storm, but I decided that was enough. I pulled that notebook out, flipped past all the crossed-out ideas, and landed on one I'd written nearly 2 years ago. Start the side project. Build something for yourself. It was vague, like most of my someday goals, but I knew exactly what it meant. There's this software tool I'd always wanted to build, a user-friendly backend system for small businesses to track clients, invoices, and internal communications without needing a tech team. It wasn't glamorous, but I saw the gap in the market. I'd pitched it once to a coworker who brushed it off like, sounds like too much work. But I knew it could work. I just never believed I had the time. Or the support. Now, I had nothing but time. And no one I needed to answer to. So I started. Evenings, weekends, late nights, I chipped away at it. Slowly. Quietly. I didn't tell anyone. It was mine. Just mine. At the same time, I started taking care of myself more. Not in a flashy way. I wasn't about to become a CrossFit guy or post protein shake pics on Instagram. But I started waking up earlier, walking to work instead of driving. I cooked instead of ordering takeout. I stopped checking my family's group chat. I muted them all, in fact. Aunt Susan messaged me around New Year's. She said she was still furious and wanted to know if I was okay. I said I appreciated her, but I needed some space for a while. She understood. By mid-January, the project was starting to take shape. I called it brickwork because I liked the idea of something solid, something you build brick by brick. It wasn't pretty yet, but it worked. It was the first time in a long time I felt proud of something that had no strings attached. Then came the weird part. People started noticing. It started with my manager. He pulled me aside one day after I submitted a clean little tool I'd written to automate some internal reports. "Where'd you learn to build this?" he asked. "Just something I've been working on in my spare time," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "You ever think of spinning that into a product?" I shrugged. "Maybe." He smiled. "If you do, let me know. I might be interested." And just like that, a door cracked open. Not wide, not all at once, but it opened. By February, I had a beta version of Brickwork. I offered it to 2 local businesses I found through Reddit small business forums. Free trials, just to see if it solved any pain points. They loved it. One of them offered to pay me to keep using it. That night, I sat on my couch and stared at the email for almost 15 minutes. Not because I didn't believe it, but because it was the first time I felt like I was in control. Not my parents, not my job, me. And then, out of nowhere, just as I was beginning to breathe again, I got a call from my mom. I didn't pick up. Let it go to voicemail. Then came a text. "Mom, can we talk? Mom, please. It's important." I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the reply button. I didn't answer. Not that day. Not the next. A week later, Emma showed up at my door. I was surprised, more than surprised. She'd never just shown up before. She was holding a box. "I brought your stuff," she said. She looked different. Tired. Older somehow. Like the weight of everything had finally caught up with her. I stepped aside and let her in. She placed the box on the counter. "It's just some photos, some of your books. Stuff I thought you might want." I nodded. "Thanks." We stood there awkwardly for a moment. She finally spoke. "They're freaking out. Mom's crying every day. Dad's pretending like everything's fine, but he's not. They know they messed up." "Do they?" Emma nodded. "Yeah, and they're scared. Because I told them I gave the car back." I raised my eyebrows. "You actually did it?" She nodded again. "Sold it. Used the money to pay off some of my credit card debt. Put the rest into a used Honda. Nothing fancy, but I don't feel like I'm stealing anymore." That hit me harder than I expected. She sat down. "I want to fix things with you. I really do. I know I've been kind of oblivious." I sat across from her. "You weren't the problem." "Maybe not," she said, "but I didn't help. I let them turn you into the strong one so I could be the lost one. That's not fair." We talked for over 2 hours. About everything. About childhood. About expectations. About the subtle ways favoritism eats at someone over time. She apologized. For real. And I believed her. When she left, she hugged me tight. "You're doing great," she said, eyes watering. "Don't let them mess that up again." I nodded. "I won't." She smiled. "I told Mom you were building something." She looked like she was going to cry. I didn't say anything. I didn't know them access to this part of my life. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But the truth is, I was building something. A life. A project. A future that wasn't tied to their approval. And as the weeks passed, things kept growing. Brickwork landed another client. Then another. I started researching how to register an LLC. I even reached out to an old friend who worked in marketing. She agreed to help with branding, no charge. One night in March, I sat at my desk, looking at the modest earnings from my side project, and realized something. I didn't need their car. I didn't need their money. I didn't need their validation. I had me. I had rebuilt from the ashes of a betrayal that should have broken me. And I did it without yelling. Without revenge. But I'll admit something else, too. That wasn't the end. Because what happened next, what they tried to do, once they realized I had something valuable, that's when the real story began. And this time, I wasn't going to let them take anything. It was sometime in late April when I got the message that made my stomach clench, not out of fear, but out of that strange, simmering emotion that sits between disbelief and fury. I had just finished a client onboarding call for Brickwork when I noticed a new email in my personal inbox. The subject line? Family Business Collaboration Opportunity. It was from my mom. I stared at it for a long time, as if the subject might morph into something else if I blinked hard enough. For a moment, I debated deleting it without reading. But curiosity got the better of me. I opened it. Hi honey. I hope you're doing well. I know we haven't talked much lately, but I've been meaning to reach out. Your father and I were so proud to hear from Emma about the software you've been building. It sounds incredible. We actually had an idea. As you know, your Uncle Jerry is expanding his contracting business and has been struggling with organization. He mentioned needing a platform to manage his jobs and clients, and I immediately thought of you. Would you be willing to set him up with your program? It would be a great opportunity to showcase your work, and it might lead to more exposure if his partners get interested. I'm happy to help coordinate it. Let me know. We're all rooting for you. Love. Mom. I couldn't stop myself from laughing. It was a humorless laugh, the kind that comes from a place so tired of being played that you start finding the manipulation almost artistic. They're all rooting for me now, huh? Funny how quickly people remember you exist when you have something they want. Uncle Jerry, for context, was my dad's older brother. He ran a construction and renovation business, decent-sized, nothing corporate, but he had money. He also had a history of favoring family when it suited him, which usually meant getting things for free under the guise of helping you get your name out there. I wasn't going to bite. At least, not like they expected. But that email lit a spark in me. Not of revenge, not yet, but of clarity. I suddenly understood what power felt like. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, calm, and sat patiently in your chest while people tried to exploit you, giving you the luxury of watching them squirm when they realized you weren't who they thought you were anymore. I waited 2 days before replying. Hi mom. Thanks for reaching out. That's an interesting idea. Could you give me more details about what Uncle Jerry would need and what kind of licensing agreement he'd be open to? I'm happy to discuss rates and timelines once I understand the scope. Best. Kyle. I didn't get a reply right away. When I did, it came from Uncle Jerry himself. Hey kid. Heard you built some kind of software. That's awesome. Your mom said it might help us keep track of our invoices and job sites. I'm not super techie, but if you can get us set up and train the office girl, we'd be happy to test it out. Let's call it a family favor? Let me know when you're free to swing by the office. Jerry. Family favor. Of course. No mention of payment. No mention of partnership. Just an assumption that I'd be thrilled to help, for free, because that's what I always did. And that's when the revenge seed was planted. I didn't respond. Not right away. I needed to think. I needed to plan. First, I called Emma. Okay, she said after I read her the emails. That's audacious. I laughed. Yeah, it's also the opening I've been waiting for. What do you mean? I mean, they just handed me a golden opportunity. They think I'm still the same guy who bends over backward for the family, who accepts crumbs and smiles. You're not. No, I said, I'm not. I didn't tell her everything, not yet. But I asked her a favor. A big one. I need you to get close to them again. Just for a while. Tell them you've forgiven them. Let them think everything's normal again. She hesitated. Kyle, I know it's a lot to ask, and I'm not saying you have to lie, but I need you to be my eyes and ears for a bit. I want to know what they're planning, what they're saying when I'm not around. There was a long silence on the line. Okay, she said finally. I'll do it. Over the next few weeks, Emma kept me updated. They're bragging about you now, she said during one call. Telling everyone you're some tech genius. Acting like they supported you the whole time. I rolled my eyes. Classic. Also, Mom's been telling people you're building software for the family. Like it's some joint venture. I felt my jaw tighten. Let her. It'll make what I'm planning even more satisfying. By May, Brickwork was running strong. I had 6 paying clients, a small monthly income stream, and 2 friends helping part-time. One handled outreach and marketing. The other, a college buddy, helped with UI design. They were the first 2 people I told about my plan. You want to what? Jonah, the designer, asked. I want to build a tailored version of Brickwork for Uncle Jerry's business. Just good enough to impress him. But it'll be a trial version, limited functionality, no long-term support. Once he's hooked, we roll out a licensing contract. Nothing shady, all above board, but with real numbers. And if he refuses to pay? I smiled. Then we pull the plug. Won't your family lose it? I nodded. Yep. And that's the point. We called it Project Masonry, a custom skin of brickwork with tweaks for contracting workflows. Jonah designed it to look polished, but made sure to build in toggles we could control remotely. My marketing friend, Priya, helped draft a licensing contract that looked professional, complete with trial dates, usage limits, and optional support tiers. In mid-June, I emailed Uncle Jerry. Hi Jerry. Thanks for your patience. I've put together a demo for your business based on what Mom described. I'd be happy to show it to you and your team next week. This version includes a free 30-day trial, after which you'll have the option to license the software under a monthly or annual plan. Let me know what day works for you. Kyle**. He replied within hours, suddenly very enthusiastic. Sounds great. We'll make time for you Monday morning. Looking forward to seeing what you've built. Emma told me later that my parents were thrilled. Mom was walking around saying, see, everything's falling into place. That weekend, I got a call from my dad. It had been months since we'd spoken. Hey, kiddo, he said like nothing ever happened. Your mom said you've been working hard. We're proud of you. Thanks. Glad you're helping Jerry out. He's got a lot on his plate. I'm helping me out, I said calmly. It's a business arrangement, not a favor. There was a pause, then a weak chuckle. Sure. Of course. But hey, once the system's up and running, maybe you could swing by the house? Have dinner with us? Maybe, I said. I could feel the shift in power. They didn't know how to talk to me anymore. I wasn't the fallback option. I was the guy holding the keys. Monday came. I wore a blazer, not because I had to, but because I wanted to feel sharp, professional, unshakable. Jerry's office was small but clean. His assistant showed me to the conference room. Jerry greeted me with a loud, there he is. The genius himself, and a firm handshake like we were old pals. I gave the demo. He was impressed. More than impressed. This is exactly what we need, he said, beaming. You built this all yourself. I nodded. With a small team. He clapped me on the back. Well done. You'll put QuickBooks out of business at this rate. Then came the contract. I handed it over. His smile faltered just slightly. What's this? Licensing agreement, I said. After the 30-day trial, you can choose a plan that fits your business. Tiered options for support and features. Pretty standard. He flipped through it. Wasn't expecting this to be so formal. I treat all my clients the same, I said, looking him dead in the eye. Family included. There it was. The moment. I saw it in his face. The realization that I wasn't going to give this away. That the kid he'd dismissed as quiet and too nice had grown up. He hesitated. Can we take a day to think it over? Of course, I said, smiling. You have 30. I left feeling weightless. Not because I had secured a client, but because I had flipped the script. They wanted me now, needed me, and they had to play by my rules. But this was just the setup. Because what came next, when the trial expired, when the system shut down, when they scrambled to figure out what happened and who had control, that would be the moment they realized. I wasn't just the good son anymore. I was the one they never saw coming. The 30-day trial ended on a Tuesday. Uncle Jerry's assistant, Claire, was the first to notice. I got the email around 10:42 a.m. Subject, urgent, system issues, brickwork down? She sounded panicked. She said the invoices weren't loading. The job logs were missing. Jerry couldn't see any of the subcontractor assignments or pending payments. I waited exactly 2 hours before replying. Hi Claire. Thanks for your message. The trial period for the custom brickwork installation, Project Masonry, expired this morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. As outlined in the licensing agreement, the software has now reverted to limited access mode. To restore full functionality, please have Mr. Ortega review and sign the licensing terms. Then proceed with the first payment. Once received, the platform will be reactivated within 2 business hours. Best. Kyle Allen. Brickwork Solutions *. Short, polite, bulletproof. It took 3 more hours for Jerry to call me. I let it ring twice before answering. Kyle, he said, skipping any kind of greeting, the software's down. We've got projects due, invoices pending, and this thing just shut off without warning. It didn't shut off, I said calmly. The trial expired. But I thought. You had 30 days. It was in the contract. Page 3. He was silent for a second. Then, we need it back up. Today. No problem, I said, keeping my tone pleasant. Just send back the signed licensing agreement and the first payment. I'll process it within the hour. You're really going to charge family for this? You're running a business, Jerry. So am I. I thought you wanted exposure. I do. Exposure and compensation. His tone turned cold. You think this is smart? Making enemies in the family? No, I said. I think letting people walk over me for 27 years was stupid. This is smart. He hung up. I sat back, heart pounding, but not from fear, from adrenaline. Because for the first time in my life, I had enforced a boundary, and I'd done it with nothing but my brain and a well-worded contract. By the end of the week, Jerry still hadn't paid. The system remained locked. Claire emailed again, then called. I didn't respond. On Friday, I got a group text. Dad, can we talk? Mom, this is getting ridiculous, Kyle. Your uncle is trying to run a business and you're playing games. Dad, just make it work for now. We'll figure out payment later. I didn't reply. A few minutes later, Emma texted me separately. Emma, they're spiraling. Mom said you're damaging the family name. Dad told Aunt Susan that you're being ungrateful. Emma, she snapped. Emma, apparently she screamed, he's the only one in this family who's earned anything on his own. Emma, it got ugly. I smiled at that. Later that night, I got a call from Aunt Susan. I picked up. Well, she said without a hello, I think it's safe to say you've shaken the tree. I chuckled. Didn't mean to make Thanksgiving awkward. Please. It was already awkward since 2008. Then she grew serious. I'm proud of you, Kyle. Really. I know this hasn't been easy. It hasn't. But it's been worth it. Good, she said. Because your parents need to learn the hard way. And maybe this time, they finally will. Over the next 2 weeks, word began to spread. I hadn't told anyone outside my inner circle, but apparently Jerry complained to the wrong people. And those people started asking, wait, what's brickwork? I got 3 demo requests within a month, 2 from unrelated businesses and 1 from a competitor of Jerry's. I said yes to all 3. It was poetic. Then came the message I didn't expect. Mom, we'd like to meet. In person. No tricks. No yelling. Just talk. It had been nearly 5 months since I last saw them face to face. I thought long and hard before agreeing. But I wanted to see them. Not to make peace, but to finish this. We met at a neutral spot, a small cafe downtown. I got there first. They showed up 5 minutes late. Mom wore sunglasses even though it was overcast. Dad looked uncomfortable. Good. I didn't stand to greet them. Just nodded. We sat in silence for a bit before Mom spoke. You've made your point. I raised an eyebrow. Which one? She sighed. That we hurt you. That we were wrong to keep the car from you. That we took advantage. That's not even half of it, I said. But go on. Dad leaned forward. Look, Kyle. We're sorry. Okay. We messed up. And we know that now. But dragging Jerry into this. You didn't have to go that far. You dragged Jerry into this when you told him I'd build something for free. Dad looked away. Mom swallowed hard. It wasn't about money. It's always about money, I said, voice low. You didn't think I was worth investing in when I needed it. But the moment I created something valuable, suddenly, I'm a family project. Mom's eyes glistened. We just wanted to be proud of you. You could have been proud of me when I graduated with honors. When I worked 2 jobs to pay rent. When I fixed my own car brakes in the middle of winter. You had years to be proud of me. They both went quiet. You didn't want to be proud, I continued. You wanted credit. You wanted to say, look what our son built, without actually helping me build it. We're your parents, Dad said. That still means something. I nodded. It does. It means you had more chances than anyone else to support me. And you wasted them. Mom sniffled. Is there anything we can do to fix it? I thought about that. 2 things, I said. First, I don't want your money. Not now. Not ever. I don't want birthday checks, investment opportunities, or anything that makes me beholden to you. They nodded, slowly. And second, you apologized to Emma. They looked confused. She gave the car back? I said. She stepped up. She told the truth. She's owned her part in this. You owe her that much. I thought this was about you, Mom said softly. It was, I said, standing up. Now it's about what kind of people you want to be. I left them there, still sitting in that booth, looking smaller than I'd ever seen them. I didn't need a grand confrontation. I didn't need them to beg. I just needed them to see. The fallout came slowly. Word got around that Jerry's business had to pause some projects while they transitioned back to manual processes. He eventually hired a cheap CRM tool that didn't work nearly as well. Emma said he grumbled about kids these days and software ransom, but never once acknowledged the contract he signed or the deal he ignored. As for my parents, they went quiet. I think they realized the damage was deeper than they thought. That I wasn't angry for a week, I was changed, and I had no interest in pretending anymore. Brickwork continued to grow. I onboarded a dozen new clients over the summer. Eventually, I left my full-time job to focus on it completely. Jonah and Priya became full partners. We formed an LLC. We even pitched to a small investor group that showed interest. Things were moving fast, and I felt lighter than I had in years. Emma and I got closer, not just because of the car situation, but because she'd grown too. She started working full-time, slowly paying down her debts, building something of her own. She apologized again, and I kept telling her she didn't have to. "You're the only one who ever turned around," I told her once. She smiled. "You just made it impossible to look away." That fall, I bought a new car. Not flashy, not a flex, just something reliable, clean mine. When the dealer handed me the keys, he said, "Big milestone, huh?" I looked down at the keys in my hand and smiled. "No," I said, "just the next step." Because revenge wasn't about destruction. Not for me. It was about clarity. About rebuilding from the ashes of someone else's selfishness and making something so strong they couldn't touch it. And in the end, that was enough.